for the first time since February 5th, they are at home. They're going to take on the Vegas Golden Knights. Pregame is at 6, a 7 p.m. puck drop, both, of course, right here on WGR. In net, all signs pointing to Alex Lyon getting the start, and then for Vegas, Mark Stone will be out for tonight. Before puck drop, though, the Sabres will be honoring Tage Thompson, Jack Eichel, and Noah Hannafin, as all three were part of that gold medal winning team for the United States. Our own Paul Hamilton has more on tonight up at our website, WGR550.com. Now to rumor season, as the NHL trade deadline is quickly approaching Friday at 3 p.m., and TSN hockey insider Darren Dreger is reporting that sources are saying talks have started to heat up between the Sabres and the St. Louis Blues involving 26-year-old center Robert Thomas. Chris Johnson of The Athletic added on saying the Sabres are offering equivalent of multiple first-rounders. Nothing official as of yet, but we'll keep you posted on any new information. Staying with the NHL, we've got 10 other games across the league tonight. Some notable matchups to keep an eye on include the Bruins hosting the Penguins and the Panthers in Jersey versus the Devils, both at 7. Senators are out west versus the Oilers at 9. 9:30 sees Minnesota hosting Tampa, and then at 10, the Sharks. They have Montreal in town. While for the NFL, 4 p.m. is the franchise deadline today. We already have 3 this offseason. Cowboys wide receiver George Pickens, Falcons tight end Kyle Pitts, and the latest from this morning, Jets running back Breece Hall. Running back Kenneth Walker for Seattle and Cincinnati edge rusher Trey Hendrickson are both not expected to be tagged and will become free agents. Again, this will become official at 4 p.m. And with that, do stay tuned. We'll get more in the NFL when Sal Capacio joins the show at 4. It's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet with you for the extra mile since 1935. I'm Zach Jones for Western New York's Voice of the Fan, WGR.
It's Mike Schopp.
It's nothing you did.
It's not you, it's me.
It's not you. It's you, but you didn't cross me.
And the Bulldog.
Why did I choose? Why did I just stay in school?
On WGR, Sports Radio 550.
I mean, it's a fair question. Each and every time. Good afternoon, kids. I am the Bulldog. Mike Schopp is out sick today. We hope to have him back in the saddle with us tomorrow afternoon here on the show. It is a fun. I think it's a fun day. I think we have a couple of things. One that has just presented itself in the last hour or so since I arrived here at Radio City for today's show. The other involves it's all hockey, by the way. We'll talk to Sal at 4 o'clock. There's a deadline for franchise tags, not that pertains to the Bills, but there's some news in the league and some players that aren't being tagged. Trey Hendrickson maybe at the top of the list that could be of interest at a position of need for the Bills. So we will get some football. We'll get a football quota in with Sal. But today is a super fun day, I think, for hockey fans and Sabres fans here in Western New York and even Southern Ontario if you're still out there. We've got a game, first game in almost a month. At home, so it's been a while with the Olympic break mixed in there. We know the gold medal won by Tage Thompson. The Vegas Golden Knights are here. Jack Eichel, former Sabres captain, key player on Team USA, also expected to be prominently featured in a pregame ceremony along with his teammate Noah Hannafin from the Vegas Golden Knights. And so we've got like the relationship between a former star player who eventually burned bridges, napalm bombs, the whole thing, just get me out of here. And Jack Eichel eventually did get out of here. And so that relationship is always interesting to me. Some years have passed. The Sabres are good again, which I'll get to in a moment, which I think is the kind of thing that can soften even the hardest of hearts when it comes to a player who left under the circumstances that Jack Eichel left in. But that is going to have to that was going to lead today's show until, again, about an hour ago when I rolled in here to Radio City, and the first thing I saw when I logged in was some reporting from one of the bigwigs in hockey circles, Darren Dreger, saying that the Sabres and the Blues, like it's hot and heavy right now. And I want to point out that an hour has gone by since he tweeted that, and we haven't gotten any more traction, any more word that things are advancing, oftentimes if you're a real regular, like psycho, I mean that as a compliment, listener of this show, if it can be taken that way, if you're someone who listens a lot, you know that Mike and I share a take about these big NHL reporters, how usually you get one or two of them leaking out that something is close to happening, and then like magic within like 15 or 20 minutes, it happens, right? That doesn't appear to be the case when it comes to the Sabres and Robert Thomas. But when I got here, I saw a tweet from Darren Dreger saying, like, it's kind of a buyer's market, and you've got some new teams involved, one of them being the Sabres, who are in the buyer's market, and they're hot and heavy after Robert Thomas, a number one center from the St. Louis Blues. Not a player that I've spent a lot of time prior to an hour ago thinking about, because I didn't really feel like a player with that contract. He's got, I think, 5 more years at $8 million. He's basically got Josh Norris's contract, is what he's got. And he plays the same position. Point-a-game player, 200-foot player, excellent player. Still pretty young, 26, I think, is his age. So really cool idea, but not something I thought the Sabres would go shopping for. If indeed they are shopping for it. I mean, I believe they're at least looking at it. I don't think Darren Dreger would be tweeting this sort of thing for his health. Chris Johnston, another of the big guys. There's your tandem. One from TSN, one affiliated with Sportsnet, I believe is where Chris Johnston works. He said the Sabres are offering or looking to meet the asking price of 3. I don't know if this is the Blues asking price, but I'm wording it sloppily. That the Sabres are working toward a package that is the equivalent of 3 first-rounders. So what that means is probably a first-round pick, like in the draft coming up, a future draft this year or next, and players who would be equated to being still holding first-round value. That could mean former first-round picks. That could mean players who weren't first-round picks or are now performing like first-round picks. You get the gist. So we've got 2 different reports, one a bit more specific about what the Sabres might be having to give up if they were to trade for such a player. Let me take my time and just sort of lay this all out. Lines are open if you have a thought on this, if you're familiar with this player. I have a feeling a lot of casual hockey fans are turning on their radio going, who's this for? Who? The Blues have a guy that's good? Because they're mired in last place in their division, not having a very good season. But Robert Thomas is fresh off back-to-back 80-point seasons for the Blues. He's an excellent player. The reason I haven't really thought of him as an idea for the Sabres is it seems to me like they have settled in pretty comfortably to the idea of Tage Thompson playing center for them again, which was necessitated by the Kulik injury and the Josh Norris injury. And you've got Josh Norris back and healthy now. And so another number one center. Norris and Thomas, to me, are very comparable players. I could try to split hairs about one skating versus the other or whatever, but on paper, they both read like very good 200-foot players. Great point of game type scorer. That's what Thomas has been the last 2 years. Norris has never really reached a point per game in an 80-game season because he's hardly ever, if ever, played 80 games in a season. He's constantly hurt. And that's where I think things could get interesting for me as it pertains to the Sabres. I do not think that they are going to find someone to take Josh Norris's contract, nor do I think they're actively trying to move him as part of this. This is guesswork on my part. But what I think would make sense for the Sabres, and I've been on this track with Norris as a player since last year's trade deadline when the Sabres acquired him, because he was clearly the better player of the principals. I'm not going to get into talking about fringe defenseman Bernard Docker and whatever, right? Norris for Cousins. I know the Sabres had to sweeten the pot, and the reason they had to sweeten the pot was not to get Bernard Docker, but to get Ottawa to move the better player, which is Norris. Why did they want to do that? Why did they want to move a better center, a better 200-foot player, as they were poised to go to the playoffs last year. This is Ottawa, again, I'm talking about at last year's deadline dealing with Buffalo. Well, they wanted, I think, certainty, as much certainty as you can have. Of course, anyone can get hurt. But Norris had been in the system there for many years and had missed multiple games every season he was there, including last year. You've seen that play out again here in Buffalo. I thought part of Ottawa's motivation was at least we'll have Dylan Cousins. He's durable. He plays them all. No, he's not going to produce even at his ceiling. His best year here was like a 60-point year. He is not going to be a point-a-game player, but he's going to compete, and he's going to be in the lineup, and we can continue to kind of move forward with our team with him in that spot. And if you're planning on Josh Norris occupying one of those spots and you're Ottawa and he gets hurt again, like he did soon after he got to Buffalo, then, where are you? You're down a number one center, and you're trying to go compete in the playoffs. Where I think this could get interesting for the Sabres, and I didn't see the whole field until an hour ago when it was mentioned that the Sabres are thought to be in pursuit. I don't want to throw in hot pursuit because I don't know that it's hot pursuit. I just know some big reporters are tweeting about it. But I don't want to give you the impression that this is like about to be nudged over the finish line or anything. But there certainly is smoke here. A reason the Sabres could be looking to add another top-line center to go with Josh Norris and Tage Thompson is Josh Norris insurance. If they can afford it, which they can, they don't have the room without doing anything to their roster, but I'm sure, a deal of this magnitude, you can stash some money away, put Greenway on long-term injury, whatever. There's ways that they can create enough room to make the deal. And what I'm thinking is that perhaps the Sabres are they're in a very similar position that Ottawa was in last year. Ottawa was not in second place in the division at the time. They didn't look as much of a contender as the Sabres have looked for the last couple of months. But the Sabres could be interested in purchasing some Josh Norris insurance because they have, I think, in a conference that I think is very wide open to them. I think Tampa and Carolina are clearly teams that historically and even this year, I would say outrank them. Pedigree-wise, expectation-wise, they should be ahead of the Sabres on any list of Stanley Cup odds. I think the rest of the conference is freaking wide open. And I'm not even here to say that the Sabres can't handle Carolina or Tampa. It's just that those are the only two teams, I think, in the entire conference that on paper right now, objectively, you would go, okay, that would be an upset. I think the Sabres beating any other team in the playoff pool, teams that are in right now or teams that are on the outside looking in that could still get in, I don't think I would classify the way this season has gone, those as an upset. So the Sabres have an opportunity here to do more than just end a 14-season playoff drought. They have an opportunity to win a round or more in the Eastern Conference this year. And if you're counting on Josh Norris to hold down one of your center spots, and at any point between here and, the finish line of the regular season, once the playoffs begin, something happens to Norris, which frequently occurs, where are you? You are down like a true dynamic 200-foot all-around. So you're down a number one caliber center. And boy, as well as the Sabres have done this year, at times without Norris in the lineup, I just think it's really hard for me to make the same case that they can beat anybody in the conference if they are down to Tage Thompson, Ryan McLeod, Tyson Kozak, and like some other trade idea, right? You get Robert Thomas on your team and something happens to Norris, well, you're all set. If you get Robert Thomas on your team and you still have Josh Norris on your team, that requires some shuffling. I don't know what they would be of the mind to do. It seems pretty clear at this point, the way the season has gone, that Tage Thompson really likes playing center ice, but could he like playing on the wing with either Josh Norris or Robert Thomas on a team that is now that much better, that much more poised to make some noise in the playoffs? Maybe he would. I think if you had all three of those players on your team, that is the most natural idea to me. I don't know how Thompson would feel about that. I don't know how internally they feel about that, or if this even is entering into their thinking. Maybe they're just like, we're just going to play all three of these guys at center, and Ryan McLeod will be our fourth line center, and we're building a wagon. I mean, that could be. But if you're thinking of those three players, the centers, Thompson, Norris, and Thomas, if you were to trade for him, as top six players, I mean, there's only two lines to go around, so someone's playing the wing, and my money would be on Tage if it does come to that. I wouldn't want to out of hand rule out the idea that they could be doing what Ottawa did last year and trying to swap Norris for Thomas. I mean, the Sabres did it, knowing Norris's reputation, being a team that was not poised to be a playoff team. So maybe the Blues could be enticed to do that, but I kind of doubt it. I think it's probably more about futures for them. Again, there probably is some money if the Sabres were to make a deal here. There's probably some money from your NHL roster going back there just to make it all work. But I don't think it's a situation where you're swapping like Ottawa did last year, where you're swapping Norris for Cousins. In this case, it would be swapping Norris for Robert Thomas. That could be it. I just kind of doubt it. I like the idea of Thomas more as insurance, like I've already said, if something were to happen to Norris. If Norris is healthy and rides through the spring and into the playoffs, you're that much better off as a team. With those three guys, if one of them's playing wing, so be it, in your top six. I mean, that's a stacked center lineup, and gives you another guy, again, if injury is to happen. So I like it from that standpoint. One other piece, because what I think you often, 803-0550, you want to talk about this idea here, Robert Thomas, St. Louis Blues, 80-point-a-year scorer, good 200-foot player, that this is what we're talking about today. I know it might be jarring. This all come at you pretty fast. The Sabres are good again. They're in a playoff spot. We're talking about them winning rounds. One of the assistant captains is talking about not just trying to play in the playoffs, but winning the cup. I know it's a while ago now, but Alex Tuck did say that a month ago or so. And now we're a few days before the trade deadline, and we're talking about acquiring an $8 million center. It's a lot, I know, right? And I'm talking fast because I'm excited, because this is an exciting idea to me. Almost always, when you have a trade involving this caliber of player, you often end up in a spot where you are going to have to give up something you don't really want to, right? Something's going to hurt, right? I highly doubt that you are going to be able to make this trade by shipping off Isaac Rozan and Jack Quinn, who's on your NHL team right now. Rozan is not. And a couple of other pieces that could equate to being first-round caliber type players. It could happen, but I just sort of doubt it. There's a special category for like a guy like Helenus, I think. Like that would hurt to give him up, but I think I could do it. What would really hurt is if you're dipping into what I've described as this team's superpower, which is those top 4D. If the Blues want someone off of that back end, say they want Owen Power, that would hurt. I don't think the Sabres have an in-house ready-made replacement for a player that's playing the way any of those top 4D are, and that would hurt. The next page of that, to me, becomes, are you talking with the Blues about more than just Robert Thomas? Because Justin Falk, while 34 years of age, has been an excellent top 4 defenseman, power play guy, puck mover, solid defensively. He's been a very good NHL defenseman for most of his career. I'm not crazy about $6.5 million for him at the age of 34, but if in the overall you're thinking we're not going to be able to keep these top 4D together forever, is there an idea out there that plugs a hole we create by trading one of those top 4D, still getting us Robert Thomas, and filling the void left by, again, I said power. I don't love this idea. I'm just wondering if it's something they could be thinking about, like a bigger deal that nets you a replacement for a top 4D and also this top flight centerman in Robert Thomas. Not knowing like what their goals are, I'm reluctant to do anything that involves touching those top 4D, but I wonder just how tempting that idea, the bigger trade to get a replacement for one of those top 4D. Look, to me, there's a drop-off there with the age that Falk is at right now, and asking him to play the kind of minutes that those top 4 have been playing here would be very risky to me. But I wonder if in the overall, the Sabres could look at their team and say, for right now, we're better. And in the long run, keeping those 4D. I mean, it's nice that Samuelson's on the contract he's on, and Byram, too, for that matter. That's a short-term deal for not the big money. Really, Dahlin and Power are the two whales back there, money-wise. I don't I like much more the idea of putting a package together for Robert Thomas, and whatever that costs me that doesn't include one of those D. I think I love that idea. I'm not sure I would really need to sit with it. I would really need to think about it. If it were the bigger deal that I just got to there that involved the defenseman coming in and the defenseman going out, to me, that's risky. Because the thing, to me, that the Sabres should be, I mean, there's a lot of sentiment out there. It ain't broke kind of thing, right? Like, why do you want to I heard Elliot Friedman on a podcast that I saw it today. I don't know if it was from today, saying, like, why mess around with it, right? You've got a good thing going. I mostly would say that, I mean, I would shout that from a rooftop about those top 4D. I think the forward ranks, yes, it's working fine, but I think if you can add someone like Robert Thomas without disturbing that core of defensemen, I think you're making your team better and by a lot. So I like that a lot. The bigger deal, disturbing that superpower, as I've coined it, that the Sabres have, not as crazy about that idea. 803-0550 is the number. Love to hear from y'all. Evan is first up this segment. Hi, Evan. Thank you for calling. You're on WGR.
Hi, how's it going?
Great.
I wanted to just highlight, I feel like kind of some of the conversation was like talking about Thomas being there kind of as like a Norris insurance. And I feel like Thomas as a player is almost double the player Norris is. I love Josh Norris, but everything Robert Thomas does is just elite. I feel like that's one of the best 200-foot players in the league. And I feel like if there's any way to get him, it'd be huge.
Yeah, well, the reason I'm saying it's insurance is because if they're counting on Norris, they could use another guy that can do – I'm not telling you Norris is the better player. I'm just saying I've got Norris. That's why I phrase it that way, as insurance, that I've got another guy in case something happens to him, is why I put it that way. No argument. Just from a durability standpoint, therefore the production has outpaced what Norris has done recently, really ever. Norris has never had a point-a-game season. He's never played 80 games. So, he outranks Norris. Don't get hung up on the insurance is merely because, I've got a guy here and I'm trying to protect myself against something happening to him that could really kind of ruin all this. Like, counting on Norris just feels kind of flimsy to me. because I just don't know if I can trust it yet. We've not really seen him play, even 20 games in a row for the Sabres. I mean, he got here last year, got hurt after 3 games. Opened the season healthy, hurt in the first game. Comes back, it's okay, playing a chunk of games. It was 19 games. Funny enough, I said he's never even played 20 games in a row. 19 games, and then out again. Now he's back. So I think the idea of having something else. I know insurance sounds like I'm downgrading what Thomas is, and I don't mean to do that at all. I think he's an excellent player and is every bit and more, because of his health, the player that Norris is. It just gives me another option there if I need it. 803-0550 is the phone number if you'd like to get in on the conversation. There's some rumors about the Sabres being in the trade market aggressively for one of, if not the biggest name left on the market. Center Robert Thomas from the Blues. That is what we're talking about to lead things off. Mike is out today. I'm the Bulldog, and you're listening to WGR. Hotline, joining me fresh off a road trip to Florida and another Sabres practice today. Paul, I know it's a job, and you're covering practice and you're writing stories and you're covering every game, and that really doesn't change whether the team is in second place or in 15th place. But overall, does this hot stretch the Sabres have had here, this hot half a season basically is what we're almost talking about, does it change anything from your perspective about doing your day-to-day job?
Yeah, it gives you something different to talk about, because it got to the point where, you run out of asking the same question over and over again because you watch the same game over and over again, and the same players say the same thing over and over again. I mean, I remember when Jake McCabe said to me, he goes, "Paul, I don't know what to tell you anymore." And I said, "Jake, I don't know what to ask you anymore." I said, "Seriously." I said,
Yeah.
It's we're both in the same boat. I mean, it's just, but, and I've said this to you before, I never, ever, ever lose sight of the fact that I cover hockey and football for a living. No matter how bad the hockey is. People have tweeted me, I feel sorry you have to watch this bad hockey. And I said, well, please don't ever feel sorry for me. I'm not out in 2 degrees digging ditches or out in 31-degree rain or whatever that is. I'm watching hockey for a living. And I understand that there are a lot of people in this world who do not enjoy their jobs at all. And I do, so I don't ever feel sorry for me, whether the hockey's good, the hockey's bad, or whatever. At the end of the day, I'm still covering hockey for a living. Right.
And now the phone just probably rings a little more frequently, including from me, right? I mean, because let's be honest. The last few years, after every game, it's not like, we got to get Paul on at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. We sort of relegated to just the pregame window because, like you're saying, how many times can you and myself and Mike have the same conversation over the course of a 14-year drought where it just looks like we're watching a slideshow from a previous family vacation? It's like the same pictures year over year over year, and it's finally different. And so, I hope you're okay with us bugging you a little bit more often.
Well, yeah, that's my job. I mean, everybody knows that I also do a Channel 2 show on Mondays, And usually I'm in the second segment, almost always. The Bills with Vic Carucci will always, and Benini will always be the first segment. Then John Scott and I do the second segment about the Sabres, and it's back to the Bills for the third. Well, guess what? Today I'm leading off with both Benini and Scott. I haven't been with both of them yet. So that just shows you right there. Sabres are leading the show off with the two main folks, and then the football will be second and third. So that just shows you right there where the interest is so much more.
I'm talking here, Paul, in this first segment about believing in it. I think 24-5-2 speaks for itself over a 31-game stretch. I think to me there isn't anything fluky about what we're getting. I mean, have they had some good fortune here or there? Sure. I mean, every hockey team's going to have that to some extent or another in a season, and you'll probably get some that end up some bad fortune along the way too. But do you believe in this right now? Like I said earlier, I'd be stunned if they missed the playoffs with the kind of form that they're in. I think they're good.
What did I tell you before the season started up again? They needed to be 12-12-1.
Everything is going so good. It's the best team in the NHL since December. At every single position, it's firing on all cylinders. I'd be really sensitive about moving this an inch to the left or an inch to the right. I know that there's a couple of holes right now that Kekalainen probably wants to fill, but I'd be really sensitive about tinkering with the chemistry of this team at all. If anything, I'm just doing something around the edges.
Jeff Merrick? Is that who that was? Sorry, I just you told me you've been here long enough. You know how it goes. Zach Jones, along with me, I'm the Bulldog. Mike is out today. That's Jeff Merrick talking about the Sabres and the trade deadline, which, by the way, comes along on Friday afternoon. I think it's the second year in a row. It was on a Friday last year. I recall being here for that. While Mike was, I don't know, sick or out or on vacation or whatever. Anyway, our Sneaky Joe from the morning show, Joe DiBiase, has quote tweeted a couple of things. I don't think he mentioned or grabbed onto this little bit from Merrick, although they had him on. That was from our morning show, right? That was talking to Joe and Jer this morning. But Joe has had a couple of other big reporters have made the case that the Sabres it's going so well, don't mess with it, right? It ain't broke, don't fix it. And Joe's smart, I think, not surprisingly, response to some of that was, is anybody going to say that about Detroit or Montreal or Boston or any of these other teams that are contending just in the Sabres division alone? No. I mean, teams that are having great years often are buyers. And look, it doesn't always work, right? Especially the rental market can be a real, just full of landmines. But this is not that. This is an $8 million hockey player that plays at the top of your lineup and is under contract for 5 more years after this, and is 26 years old. Like, this is not just a flyer on a rental. But it would be a big move, and it would shake up their team. There is no question about that. I'm not really sure I want to get with, you should just settle for being pretty good right now. Like, if I think it's right for anyone that works for the Sabres, Kekalainen, Bergevin, the new front office, to look at the conference and see an opportunity. We can compete with anybody in this conference. So why shouldn't we go hard at it instead of just, oh, yay, we got in. The playoff drought is over. That all sounds like, I don't mean to paint Jeff Merrick in this light. He's done a lot of great work within hockey media for many, many years. But any sentiment that sounds like don't touch it, it's too good, sounds to me like they're not saying the quiet part of that comment is it's too good and you're just Buffalo. Just look, you're competitive again. You're in the race. You might even make some noise. But, pat you on the head and go get back in line for another slushy, kid. Like that it sounds very patronizing to me. I know I might be reading too much into it, but I think you have an opportunity to go after it. You go after it. It's another thing if you're selling futures like crazy to try to squeeze in. Like, that's a whole different thing. And there's a case to be made for teams in that position. And if the Sabres were, right now, I don't know, Ottawa, and 5 or 6 points out of a playoff spot with the deadline approaching on Friday, there might be an appetite to do that, to go just trade futures and try to get something in here that's going to push it over the finish line and get me into the playoffs. This Sabres season is not, I know it's a lot to take in, but this is not, the Sabres are not having that season. They are having the season where you go, maybe this is as good a look at it as we'll have. Maybe this is the year. I know that sounds nuts considering where we were at Thanksgiving as a fan base, but I think sitting here on the 3rd of March, I think that is perfectly reasonable. So if management looks at it as being wide open enough, go big. So I don't really like the, don't tinker with it. No. Could it blow up in your face? Of course. But if you're not really disturbing your NHL roster, which is how the wind is blowing on this thing from the reports we've heard, right? We had Drager saying the Sabres are pushing hard on Thomas with the Blues. You had Chris Johnston from Sportsnet say looks like the equivalent of 3 first-round picks. Jeremy Rutherford, a Twitter follow for me going all the way back to 2014 when the Sabres and the Blues were thought to be hot and heavy about Ryan Miller. I was talking to Jeremy Rutherford while that trade was being made, as it turns out. On a Friday back in 2014, we had Jeremy Rutherford on to talk about potential return and everything, and I've been following him ever since. Excellent. He's with The Athletic now, but had been maybe post-dispatch with the Blues. Anyway, covering the Blues for a lifetime, this guy. And a couple of things from him since the show has begun. He did say right before I started that Thomas has not yet been asked as a part of this conversation to waive his no-move clause. So, again, as far things can move fast, but as of an hour ago, things hadn't gotten serious enough for the Blues, at least as far as Jeremy Rutherford is concerned, to ask Thomas about waiving his no move to come to Buffalo. There's one. 2, more recently, Rutherford tweeted that last summer, the Blues were thought to be very hot and heavy after Bowen Byram. But, Rutherford says, this time around, in any Robert Thomas trade talks, their focus is not on Byram, which I think tells you, they could be focused on another of the top 4D, but I think you connect all the dots here, the equivalent of 3 first-round picks from Chris Johnston, Rutherford saying that the Blues aren't after Bowen Byram. It doesn't take the other 3 top D off the table, but come on. I'm hopeful that means we're talking about futures here largely. And if it's someone from the NHL roster, it's it's a Quinn or some other like part that's more of a role player than any. 'Cause to me, those top 4D, that would be very tough to part with for me at this point. I think they are the engine that makes this whole thing go for the Sabres. So just wanted to fill you in on where we're at on that front. Let's get back to the phones at 803-0550. Ellen is first up this segment. Hello, Ellen. Thanks for calling. You're on WGR.
Hi. Thank you so much, Bulldog. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Good. I am in complete agreement with you. I think we should go all in and add another player. Norris is great, but yes, he's probably going to get hurt again. And I think our playoff stretch goes well beyond the first round. And I just remember Yarmo in his initial meeting with the press when he first got his GM position, which was long overdue. I remember him saying making the playoffs and then being beat out the first round is not a good feeling. We want to go all the way. And I think this team can. I think we have got it this year.
All right, Ellen. Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at. I don't want to hear don't go for it. I get from the outside. You know, I shouldn't say it that way. It's not like I'm on the outside with all of you. From a certain perspective, you could look at getting another top-line center as being a bit of overkill. But the Norris point, to me, is integral to the whole thing. I don't know what the Sabres' thinking on it is. I don't know if they already know that Thompson would welcome a move back out to the wing. I don't know that they're as worried as I am about Josh Norris staying healthy. But protecting yourself in the event that something happens to him with a player that's every bit and then some, the player Norris is, I mean, that is like next level team building to me. I love it. Do you eventually have a problem? You know, you're going to be able to pay everyone here. Maybe this is a sign that they don't think they're going to get home with Alex Tuck. Because that's another, I mean, that's a player that if you sign him at any point here, and certainly once you get to the summer, he becomes your highest paid forward. Like he's going to make $2 million a year more than Norris or Thomas both make, around $8 million. So maybe you're moving in a direction that allows you to keep Tuck as a rental and let him go, and you also are replenishing your top six along the way. You know, maybe that's the direction this is going. Joe is next up. Hi, Joe. Thanks for calling. You're on WGR.
Bulldog, I appreciate it, man. I think the Venn diagram of people who are afraid to make a move and people who are okay with a first-round exit is a circle because, I just like, if you look at the other team in Buffalo who is, you know, seemingly been afraid to make a big move for a guy who can move the needle in a direction that's going to get you a championship, you know, it's where has that gotten us? A lot of divisional round exits. So, you know, obviously, if I'm the Sabres, I'm not jeopardizing what has gotten me to this point. But if you have an opportunity to get a guy who's going to make some moves and catapult this team into a stratosphere that we haven't seen in 15 years, it's foolish not to want to do that. So,
all right, here. I'm with you, Joe, and that's where I'm at. I think this sort of thinking is there's a reason why I think you hear people like this clip we played from Merrick and what I mentioned from Elliot Friedman earlier. They are used to the Sabres operating at a certain level within the structure of the league. Like they know their place, right? Everyone talks about how we want them to get back to the playoffs. It's such a strong hockey market. But there's a little bit of or maybe a lot of you're not really all that. So stop trying to pretend like you think you're a contender now. I think they absolutely should behave like they're a contender because of what the conference looks like. Yes, I think Tampa and Carolina outclass them on paper and mostly on the ice. I mean, the Sabres did just hand Tampa one of their worst defeats of the year in their place on Saturday night. But, like, objectively, yeah, you know, I'm sort of nodding. Yeah, Tampa, Carolina, those teams are the class of the conference. That is it. Detroit, Montreal, Boston. I mean, I like things about all these teams. Pittsburgh, the Islanders, Washington. These are the other teams that are in playoff spots or sniffing around playoff spots right now. I think the Sabres are easily the third best team in the conference. I mean, I think pretty comfortably. So I think acting like it is completely natural. It's foreign to us because, like I said, I mean, if you told me on Thanksgiving we were going to be talking like this, and I'd be sitting in here on March 2nd, or March 3rd, talking like this, I would have never guessed it. But I think things move fast, and here we are. 803-0550 is the phone number if you want to get in on the conversation about these Robert Thomas trade rumors. St. Louis Blues #1 center, 80 points the last couple of years for the Blues. You want to get in on the conversation? Lines are open. Mike is out today, along with Zach Jones. I am the Bulldog, and this is WGR.
To get to the point where the cutoff point. Well, they've just killed 3 of those wins. So what now? What is it? 9-12-1. I mean, you can play under three games under 500 if it's still the same numbers moving forward. So, and you don't want them to play 9-12-1. You don't want to limp into the playoffs, and you really don't even want them to go 500. I mean, you want them to be the team that showed up in Tampa the other night. And blew the Lightning right out the back door. I mean, that's as bad as I've seen the Lightning play, and I don't know how long since this group that they've put together. And it's been a long time, Kucherov and Hedman, and I've never seen that team pass as poorly as they did that night. Go offside constantly, miss the net, throw the puck up the middle of the ice twice, and wind up with goals against. I've never seen them do that. Now, the Buffalo Sabres forced some of this, too. I mean, with the way they played, it wasn't just the Lightning making mistakes. They were making the mistakes because the Sabres were playing fast, and they were on them, and forcing the Lightning into quick decisions. And that was a night where quick decisions weren't going well for them. And the things were going very well. The Sabres were playing direct. They were playing fast. The goal I loved probably the best, if I'm looking at a goal that shows you what the Sabres are about now, Owen Power, who I think has played much, much better for the most of this season.
Yep.
He causes a Cirelli turnover at his own blue line. Dahlin had been up ice. Power didn't even blink. He knew where Dahlin was. He got the puck and immediately put it up almost 2 lines up the left wing side to Dahlin to get him up into transition, and he winds up scoring on the play. But it's Power. Yeah, the turnover is important, but it's what he did with the turnover. It was so quick. It was turnover, bang, puck's gone, and it's right on Dahlin's stick. Now he's into the zone in an outnumbered situation, and he gives them the lead. I mean, I thought that right there is a good example of things we haven't seen in a long time from this team. And we're seeing it more and more as this season has gone on.
Paul Hamilton on the Western Hotline with us here on WGR. Sabres host Vegas tomorrow night in their first game back at home since the 20 or so day Olympic break. It'll be a Tage Thompson gold medal ceremony. We'll get to what he had to say about that and Eichel's involvement here in a bit, Paul. But it strikes me, I don't know if you were asked this question by myself or Mike at any point when this season started to turn around, or if we just never really got to it. But I'm curious, what do you think changed? We know the timing of the general manager, Kevin Adams, being replaced. We know how it coincided. I think they won 3 games before that, but it was sort of in the wind that something was going to happen before that hot streak started ahead of the holidays in December. What do you think happened here that this team now looks like they can go toe-to-toe with some of the best teams in the league?
Well, this is, for the most part, Kevin Adams' team. He got most of the players. I mean, Thompson, he, of course, was part of the O'Reilly deal, which was a little bit before.
Sure, yeah.
But for the most part, this is his team. And it wasn't what he was doing. It was, to me, what he wasn't doing, which I thought was his weakness of being inexperienced. Like when you lose 13 in a row and just sit there and do nothing. You didn't even call somebody up from Rochester. Nothing. And then this year, in the beginning of the year, you have 1 win in 9 games. Again, you just sat there and did nothing. I think, well, I know, actually, there were some players in that room who had no faith in him at all that he would do the right thing at the right time to help this team move forward. And, and then in comes Kekalainen, who tells them, look, there's a lot of talent in this room, guys. And I really like the talent here. He goes, what I don't like is watching you guys play teams that you're better than and underperform and don't put forth the effort. And he goes, that changes today. And that's it, basically. I mean, all the players kind of confirmed that. Yep. That he goes, because they had heard the press conference. He goes, exactly what he told you. It was short. It was sweet. It was direct, which is the way he is. And I think the players felt, hey, wait, and we're in the NHL again. You know, look, we got a guy who's done this for 10 years. He's going to hire a guy who also has done it for over 10 years. Yeah, let's go. And then the other thing was, too, that, and we saw it with Granato, now and then they would play the way Granato wanted them to, then they'd win, but not much because they're hard-headed and they want to do it their way. Same thing with Lindy last year. They did it for a bit, and then they wouldn't. At the end of the year, they did. And then, you know, it started to go well for them. And I think they finally just said, wait a minute, guys, what we want to do here isn't working. We sit in the bottom of the league when we do it our way, and we win hockey games when we do it Lindy's way. I got an idea. Why don't we do it Lindy's way for a while? See what happens. Well, you've seen what happens.
Yeah. It does really speak to how much effort, above and beyond effort, playing for the guy next to you, all that kind of stuff, very cliche stuff. It does really tell you how much of a difference it can make when you've got, on most nights, more guys than not paying the price. Because that, Paul, like the aggressive forecheck, how well they do at getting on top of teams in the offensive zone, a lot of that is effort. Of course, playing defense is almost entirely, of course, there's positional and understanding the system and all that sort of stuff too, right? The technical aspects of it. Saw the mighty Jason Isbell in the 400 unit up at the OLG stage in Niagara Falls at Fallsview. First time in that venue. Holy cow. If someone you really dig is playing there, I highly recommend going. The sound was incredible. I've heard from people who are promoters and whatnot, and like artists love playing there because the sound for them on the stage is fantastic. The room is beautiful. It's a great spot. Anyway, there was a little Isbell there for you on a 2 for Tuesday. No, anyway. Hi, I'm Bulldog. Mike is away today. It's a fun day so far. Latest I've got for you, Chris Johnston of Canadian hockey media royalty, referring to the Robert Thomas rumors. It just feels like there's enough interest there that there's real push towards seeing a deal completed. That is the Sabres and Robert Thomas we're talking about. That's what we've been talking about the whole first hour of the show today. Really cool idea. 26-year-old, 80-point player. Not a depth move. Not let's get a left-handed D for our third pair move. Like a significant go for it type of move, and pretty exciting, I'd say. All right, Lou is first up this segment. Hi, Lou. Thanks for calling. We got about a minute.
Okay, real quick. Why not, go after a stud like a Matthews? I mean, it'd be great. Like, you gotta go for it. It's like just to put us over. Like, I don't know if you put feelers out there. He was booed in Toronto. He was booed, man. It's like, I'm sure he's available with the right package.
Okay, well, I don't think that's happening, although I do. I watch the Leafs a lot. He looks miserable there. Like interviews, like intermissions, like it just, yeah, I mean, he almost all but has a sign saying, get me out of here. But this move for Robert Thomas is not Austin Matthews. He's not one of the 5 best players in the world. But he is a big go-for-it move. So it might not be the name recognition, but to me, it's a credible move. Thanks for the call. We got to take a break. Sal Capacio right after this on WGR.
Big quarterback news coming down in just the last few minutes here. We'll get to that in just a moment. First up, though, Sabres game night and their first home game since February 5th. They take on the Vegas Golden Knights tonight. Pre-game is at 6, 7 p.m. puck drop, both, of course, right here on WGR. In net, all signs are pointing to Alex Lyon getting the start, and then for Vegas, Mark Stone will be out for this matchup. Before puck drop, though, the Sabres are going to be honoring Tage Thompson, Jack Eichel, and Noah Hannafin. All three were on that gold medal-winning U.S. team. Our own Paul Hamilton has more on tonight at our website, WGR550.com. And while the deadline is not until Friday, TSN hockey insider Darren Drager is reporting that sources are saying talks have started to heat up between the Sabres and the St. Louis Blues, involving 26-year-old center Robert Thomas. Chris Johnson of The Athletic added, saying that the Sabres are offering the equivalent of multiple first-rounders. Nothing since then. That was about 2 hours ago, but we'll keep you posted on any new information. Now to the NFL. The 4 p.m. franchise tag deadline has passed. We did have 3 this offseason. Cowboys wide receiver George Pickens, Falcons tight end Kyle Pitts, and then the latest from this morning, Jets running back Breece Hall. Though the Colts are placing the transition tag on quarterback Daniel Jones, and then this coming down just the last few minutes here, the Arizona Cardinals have informed quarterback Kyler Murray that they will be releasing him. Stay tuned. Coming up next, more on the NFL. Sal Capacio will join the show. That's Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet with you for the extra mile since 1935. I'm Zach Jones for Western New York's Voice of the Fan, WGR.
Capacio, Sal Capacio, Sal Capacio, Sal Capacio on WGR.
Thank you, Zach, for getting Chris Johnston's affiliation correct. I said Sportsnet a couple of times earlier. He's TSN and The Athletic. He first came into my sphere as someone who was on Sportsnet, and I just haven't kept track of the musical chairs that is sometimes hockey media. So anyway, he's just one of the big reporters that has been tweeting about and speculating about a potential Sabres trade for Blues top-line center Robert Thomas. Joining us for much more on this developing story from Florida, because that makes sense, is our own Sal Capacio, our Bills beat reporter of many years. That makes sense. That tracks. Hi, Sal.
Hi, yeah, I'm chasing down stories in hockey and football in Florida. And not really, just came down to Florida. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. You know what days like this are like, right?
Oh, yeah.
You just texted me the best compliment someone in my position can get. There's a lot of pressure. If people are hanging on every word, you want to not make any mistakes, right? But what did you tell me? You're like just 45 minutes of the first hour, you're just glued to it. Like, oh my God, is something about to happen?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the story. I actually checked into my hotel, and it was like maybe 10 minutes after 3, and I put you on. I'm like, let me just catch up with Bulldog, see what he's talking about, because I got to go on with him at 4. And I heard you talk about, like, okay, they're saying this is what would be involved in a package, equivalent of 3 first-rounders. And I didn't hear who it was for. And I'm like, oh, my God. And I'm thinking, is it Robert Thomas? Is it Kyrou? Who is it? Like, and I had to wait a little while, but ever since then, I'm like, okay, here we go. And I've been listening to you and sitting here in my hotel room in Florida, listening to you talk about it and kind of hanging on pins and needles and thinking about Robert Thomas. And once that happened, and yeah, it's very, very exciting. You're right about that.
Yeah, fun times. I love the idea of the Sabres going big like this. It's not something I necessarily was expecting, but it sort of lines up to me that, they would want to have another top-line center in case something happens to Norris. To me, there's just every reason to be fearful of that, and this would cover that. If you have all 3, great. So pretty fun times. Maybe you'll miss a big story while you're out of town. You'll become the new Howard Simon, who used to miss all the big news when he was off on the morning show, I think.
It'll happen. So the reason I'm down here, by the way, is there's a Buffalo-themed party that's been started. It's been going on. It's called Everything Buffalo. And I mean, like, you name it, there are tons of Buffalo companies and food that comes down here. And there's so many transplants and, former Buffalonians. And it's like, there's like 2,000 people that show up at this thing. And I've been asked to be the MC this year. So I'm down here for that. I'm not kidding you. On the website, promoting me as the MC, you're going to laugh. Please try not to laugh too hard. It says Frankie Shinta had a large gig he couldn't reschedule. So Sal Capacio is the MC this year. I mean, I'm not kidding you, by the way. It literally says that. And I'm not trying to make fun of my guy, Tim, who put this together. He's been asking me for years to come down, and it just worked out this year where I could be the MC of this Buffalo party. And it's for a good cause. And our friend Kate Glazer and Hope Rises, like charity and stuff like that. So it's really cool. So I came down here for that today, and
awesome
I'm
deal.
still working, doing the thing, and hitting up with you guys. I got to tell you, though, Robert Thomas, every time I hear his name, I think about 2018. That's the guy that a lot of Sabres fans and the Sabres wanted, right? And then they got Tage and O'Reilly. But, Bulldog, you know that I play in the Zach Hyman golf event every year now. Zach, gotten to know him and his family. He's a big Bills fan, and go up and support his charity. Well, because Robert Thomas is from Ontario, he last year played in the event. And I didn't see Robert Thomas. He came and he had to leave early, but I didn't see him. But I will say, I saw his golf ball in the long drive. He won the long drive. So we pull up, and I'm playing with Carlo Koliakovo and Jay McKee. Sorry, Jay McKee.
Okay.
And we pull up, and we're like, there's no way someone hit the ball that far, right? And it was Robert Thomas. I'm telling you, it was like they put the long drive on a hole where normally it's just straight fairway, but there was a hill way down. Nobody's going to hit that hill. This dude put it like halfway up that hill. Like it had to be a 350-yard drive. And anyway, so if you want Robert Thomas going to Buffalo, tell him you got some great golf courses you can hit long drives.
Right, I want to get paired up with him at the Sabres golf tournament. Then that's where you want to be. Sal Capacio on the West Her Hotline with us. Well, if we can bring ourselves for 20 minutes or so to depart from the Robert Thomas trade speculation involving the Sabres, it's a newsy day in the NFL. We're another day closer to free agency opening, and of course that's preceded by the legal tampering period, which begins next Monday. But the biggest news just happened during the commercial break at the top of the hour here as we were lining you up. I'm sure Zach told you about Kyler Murray being released by the Arizona Cardinals. Not a surprise. There was a lot of speculation that they were going to start over. But still pretty stark. It's a first overall pick. From 2019, right, the year after Josh Allen, because the Cardinals drafted Josh Rosen that year and only went a year with it. And the next year they had the first overall pick and picked Murray, and that was the end of Rosen there. And here we are 7 years later, and Murray's done in the desert as well.
It's not the same thing because he's a quarterback and the other guy's a receiver, but it just it feels like a Stefan Diggs kind of situation where time just ran its course between the two sides. And he's been there a little while, and he's a franchise quarterback. I get it. Like I said, not apples to apples, but you understand when you see that happen sometimes, you feel it. And it just felt like this had been brewing for a couple of years. And, there's been a lot of questions about, Murray's love for the game, his dedication to the game, what's real and what's not, the video game rumors from a couple of years ago, things like that. But it just never seemed like they were particularly all in on him being the guy they could trust to be their franchise quarterback. Right. And maybe he wasn't all in on being their franchise quarterback. Who knows? So to get to this point isn't totally surprising. I think, though, to get to this point with him being outright released now is notable, right? Maybe they couldn't find a trade partner. He's got a contract. I get it.
Right.
You have to have the right circumstances. But to get all the way here, and what's their plan? What's the Cardinals' plan at quarterback? I mean, so that to me is super interesting. And then, does he become a replacement for Tua? I've seen the Jets tied to him, maybe speculating. Could they do something like that? And, hey, I mean, he could be an upgrade for a lot of teams in this league. Kyler Murray's not a bad quarterback, but I'm also not putting him on, a guy that's going to go to a franchise and turn them around immediately.
Yeah, I would say right now, I mean, while I recognize that he can make plays that can beat you, see that game that, the Hail Murray play against the Bills back from, quite a few years ago now. But I would welcome him to Miami or the Jets. I think there's a ceiling there that I just don't think you're going to get. To me, he's a different player than Tua, but I think your ceiling is probably about the same as it was while he was there at his peak.
Yeah.
That means you could have a year where it falls right, But so yeah, I think he would be an upgrade for quite a few teams, or at least a few teams that we've mentioned there. But he's not a player that I'm scared of myself.
Totally get it. I mean, he does a lot of things you like in a quarterback these days, the way he can run the football, He's obviously the size, hasn't necessarily been a detriment to him, but it's been something that's been talked about when he came into the league and stuff like that. And I like the way you put that, which is look, I mean, he could go to a team and really help them be better, but I don't think he'd be the driving force, right? I mean, he's not a guy that you say, okay, because of this guy, they're going to win all these games. And I'm not saying he's quite the passenger either, but he might be more passenger than he is driver at this point of a team like that. You know, those teams you mentioned, the Jets, the Dolphins, they just wouldn't have enough for him to carry them. You know, the Bills, you look at the Bills, right? The Bills are the number 1 or number 2 odds to go to the Super Bowl next year in the AFC. Why is, despite the holes that we talk about,
right,
you know, when I come on and having a change in head coach, why is that? Because they have a franchise quarterback who kind of doesn't really matter what changes around him. Everybody thinks he can still carry the team.
Sal Capacio on the West Her Hotline with us here on WGR. I know I texted you earlier today. I wanted to sort of expand on the conversation we partly had yesterday about receiver, right? And sort of maybe get a little more into each idea, not like every guy in the league, but like anyone that makes sense as an idea. When we talked yesterday, recognizing you said like it's, you know, pie in the sky and probably not realistic, but like what would you like to see them do? How hard would you like to see the Bills go at it? You mentioned Justin Jefferson. So I want to start there, and then we'll work our way down to like the more realistic trades and or free agents. Obviously, you're not telling us you think Justin Jefferson's going to get moved, but I would tell you I would want Brandon Beane. If I owned a team, I would want my GM to call the Minnesota Vikings and just ask them, hey, is there anything at all that would get you to move this player? You're starting over at quarterback again. You know, like how smart is it to keep paying top dollar for the best receiver in the league, arguably, when you're at square one or not even you're at square zero at quarterback? Like that could get kind of silly after a while. So I'd want to gauge whether or not if they hang up on me and laugh, they hang up on me and laugh.
Absolutely. You 100% have to do that. I think it's the due diligence of any, you know, GM who's trying to win to do something like that. If that's the position you need, that you feel like that's going to be something that gets you over the top, I don't care what team it is or what player it is. I don't think that other GM is necessarily going to laugh at you. They're going to probably respect it and say, yeah, I totally get it, but that's just not happening, right? Because you have to do it. But you never know when you get a GM and say, I mean, did you ever hear the story about how the Luka Doncic trade happened, you know, with the Lakers? Like, that's what happened. Like, you know, what's his name? Rob, I forget his name, for the Lakers. He runs the Lakers, and apparently he literally just, like, called up the GM of the Mavs, and he's like, hey, you know, you want to get together for coffee? I just want to run something by you. And they started talking, and that's what happened. And it gets to it, right? You just never know where these conversations can go. I mean, heck, and now again, I'm not trying to just float names out there, but think of Joe Brady. Why wouldn't you just call the Cincinnati Bengals and say, did you ever think about moving Jamar Chase? Like, would you ever think about that? You just gave him a lot of money. They're not a team that spends a lot of money like that. So I absolutely. Why would they not call the Jets about Garrett Wilson? If they're going to call the Dolphins about Jalen Waddle last year, and you know the Jets about Quinnen Williams, why not call the Jets about Garrett Wilson? To me, the overall point of what I'm saying here is nothing should be off the table for Brandon Beane to try and at least investigate.
I love the Wilson idea, right? Same thing. I had him on my list of guys to ask you about because there's a bit making the rounds today of Sauce Gardner talking about how hard it was to deal with him in practice. And, you know, that's a former teammate. But, yeah, the logic is exactly the same to me. If you're going to call Miami about Waddle, you should call the Jets about Wilson. Everything I just said about Justin Jefferson, I mean, Garrett Wilson is not thought of like Justin Jefferson. But, you know, what kind of opportunity has he had with the quarterbacking that he's been living with on the Jets? Even when Aaron Rodgers was there. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is famous, but in the state he was in then, I mean, I don't know. I think we still haven't really even seen what Garrett Wilson can really do in the league. And, you know, do they want to try to go get Kyler Murray and have Garrett Wilson there to pair with him? Okay, well, that makes sense. But if you're starting over at quarterback again, like if you're thinking about the draft or developing a young guy, same point I just made about Justin Jefferson totally holds with the Jets and Garrett Wilson. What am I paying you $30 million a year for if I don't have a guy that can get you the ball?
That's right. And, you know, there are other names, right, that we talk about. So those are the, as I say, pie in the sky names. Those are the names that you make a call and you see where it leads, and you just never know. And then, of course, you get to the Alec Pierces, and you get to the Rashid Shaheeds, Romeo Dobbs. I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson is a nice player. I like Wan'Dale Robinson. Like, he's a free agent, I believe. Like, these are names. These are good players, I think, that you could put on the Buffalo Bills, and they become a bit of a better offense. They're not those types of players. And I just think it's time, as we discussed yesterday, for this team to take as big of a swing as possible. This is not Josh Allen's, third year anymore when they traded for Stephon Diggs. Josh is going to be 30 this year, and he just signed that contract extension last year. He's got 5 more years left on it. I mean, we all hope he plays beyond that, but what's he got? How many more real great years? He does have some. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many, but you need to maximize as much as possible now, and I think that you have to make those calls.
I think it's fair to view him as hopefully he's at a plateau where he stays at the level he's at right now for a few years. Mm-hmm. But it's hard for me to imagine him getting any better than he's been, athletically speaking, right? Like the days of hurdling linebackers and all that. Like, I just think that gets harder to imagine as you get into the second half of your career, which really, honestly is about where Allen is right now. So, that's a reality I think you got to really confront. How about Mike Evans for this, Sal? Because he is a guy who's been a number one, but he's older, and, there might be a little concern. I mean, he finally had an injury-riddled year that kept him from getting another 1,000 yards. Every year prior in his career, he'd been over 1,000 yards, but he's definitely on the wrong side of 30. What do you think of that idea? Because I read a long piece by Matthew Berry, I think it was, who compiles like every year after the combine. Here's what I heard, right? Like, here's who I was talking to, this person and that person, and he mentioned that Evans, like the Bills, he heard the Bills tied to Evans. So along with Rashid Shaheed, by the way, I don't think you and I or you with Mike and myself have talked about Mike Evans. What do you think of that idea?
I mean, I love Mike Evans as a player. I do. And if you told me right now, like, hey, you're just going to insert Mike Evans on the Buffalo Bills, great. Like, that's awesome. I need to know how much money he's going to make. Maybe the over $20 million is a little inflated, thinking about his age. How many, is he going to get that kind of money? If he is, I think maybe I might need to be out on that. I think I can maybe spend my resources elsewhere. But the thought of him is juicy. Mike Evans is not injury prone. He's not. But, Bulldog, you and I are the perfect guys to talk about this and say this, because as we get older, we're both active. We've been athletes. It's not that and I'm not putting ourselves on the level of an NFL player.
I know.
It's not that you get hurt more, but recovery takes more time, right? Mm-hmm. And those things start to pile up. And when I see what happened to him last year, I just start to think, like, what about the next injury? Like, how long is he going to be out for? And what's that look like? And because of these injuries, does that impact him going forward? And I could be reading too much into that. That's fine. Maybe it's me. Maybe he's a little too cautious there. But that's what would scare me about Mike Evans. Is he a true number one, can do everything? I don't think he is anymore. I don't know. I mean, he might be still over top of Khalil Shakir, but again, he's not in the level of the Jefferson or Chase or those guys we talked about. Still really good. I like him a lot. I just wonder about, if you're going to pay him that much, he is a little bit older. What does that look like? Look at last year. I know he only played 8 games, but in that half sample, he had his lowest yards per reception of his career and his lowest catch percentage of his career. And I don't know, like, right now, how to wash that. Like, because he only played half a season. It's not a full sample size. Baker's a pretty accurate quarterback. He also had injuries himself and wasn't the same a lot of last year. But I do look at that and go, is that where he's starting to hit the wall a little bit? Right.
You always got to worry about it. I'm laughing over here because you're talking about the injuries. I try to work out. I do work out in some way, shape, or form just about every weekday. Some push-ups, some crunches, some bird dogs, 90 minutes on an exercise bike. Friday after that workout, in the shower, I hurt my back.
Yeah, there you go.
But just like what? Like just walk. Like, what was that? What was that? And now it still hurts now. I mean, that's, whatever. I'm 60. All right, Mike Evans is not 60. But, yes, as age is unforgiving, Sal, is what it is.
You know the one I'm dealing with? For some reason, we were on the cruise a couple weeks ago, and my knee just kind of blew up. It still is. It's swollen, and, like, like, man, and it really hurts, and I'm limping half the time I'm not. And we really think what happened, we're not sure. Like, I was on the treadmill on the cruise ship, and because the cruise ship was rocking, it made my knee, like, go a certain way, and I don't even notice it. And I get off, I'm like, what is going on here? And I think it's literally because the ship was rocking a little bit.
It doesn't take much. It does not take
Right.
much. All right. Well, we've covered most of it here. One name that I saw on the free agent list, and I'm hopeful, I should have checked. Is Christian Kirk a free agent? He is, isn't he?
Yes.
What about
He's also very good friends with Josh Allen.
Right. Like, that's another guy that to me is not he's not a number one, but is he someone that could help you? Like, would he maybe make you better? I think, but it's not, it's not the gold standard, alpha guy, but maybe that's a guy that could, at this stage of his career, be someone that could complement what they've got here.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you look at their core, you could convince me a lot of guys that could just be inserted and help them. And maybe Christian Kirk would be one of those guys. Again, though, dealt with injuries the last 2 years. I think he did play 13 games last year, I'm looking, but I think like he was in and out of the lineup quite a bit. The year before that, injuries in Jacksonville. So, yes, I think he has a skill set and the relationship and all that. You could check some boxes. I just feel like if the Bills come out of this cycle and we get to, even after the draft, I guess the draft will be another pressure point here because they could draft a first rounder. But let's say they go up to the draft and they come away with a couple of nice receivers and they sign a Romeo Doubs to a 4-year deal and a Christian Kirk to a 2-3-year deal. Like, aren't we all going to be like, you're just kind of doing what you did with Palmer and Samuel, right? Like, it's the same thing. Is it really going to help? And I need the top end, not the bottom end lifted up. I need the top end to be filled a little higher.
Yeah, I like the way that sounds. Before you go, anything surprising with the franchise tag deadline being 20 minutes ago? I guess the latest news was that the Bengals weren't going to tag or did not tag Trey Hendrickson. That was speculated to be the case, but it definitively is the case. How active should the Bills be in shopping for someone like Trey Hendrickson?
I mean, Trey Hendrickson is going to cost a lot of money. I'm all for getting a pass rusher here, but if you allocate all those resources to pass rusher and you leave kind of wide receiver by the wayside, I'm not going to be as much of a fan of that. And look, I could be totally wrong about this, but I just feel like, and I think I said this to you yesterday or the other day before, I feel like Jim Leonard's scheme is going to help. Yes, of course, who wouldn't want a Max Crosby? Who wouldn't want a Trey Hendrickson? I'm not saying that. But I also think that you can elevate what they already have or the guys they bring in simply because of what they're going to do defensively. Like, they're going to be better there even without those guys, even though those guys are great. So I think the return on investment would be a lot higher at wide receiver or even, helping out at safety or linebacker. They could pick some spots here for me. Now, as far as franchise tags, surprising. I guess I was a little surprised that the Jets did decide that they did tag Hall, right? Breece Hall?
They did. Yeah.
Yeah, I was a little surprised about that. I thought that the momentum was going the other way, as of a couple of weeks ago, that like we'll see. And then, maybe it wasn't the momentum going the other way, but that they could still trade him, but there were teams poking around. I heard at the combine that like Kansas City could be looking for a running back, right? They might. Yeah. I don't know now if Love is going to be even fall to them enough in the draft. So are they going to go out? Are they going to shop for a Kenneth Walker now? Are they going to trade for a Breece Hall? You know who the guy is that gets tied to Kansas City? I don't know if I told you this from the combine. Travis Etienne.
Yeah, I've heard that name too.
Yeah. So, maybe that was one. And then, I guess the Colts are interesting because of what they're doing. And they're allocating that resource to Daniel Jones. They're tagging him.
Transition tag, though, Pierce. Right? Not franchise. Transition tag, I thought I read on Jones.
Okay.
Right?
Thank you. Thank you for clearing that up. I saw that. Well, that gives them, room to operate there and try to keep him, but they also want to keep Alec Pierce. I just don't know how they're going to be able to do all that.
Yep. All right, Sal. Enjoy your time in Florida.
Okay.
And we will try to hook up later in the week.
All right, you got it, buddy. Thanks.
That's our dude, Sal Capacio, live on the Western Hotline, just pouring over, some free agent ideas, trade ideas, specifically at receiver. Just wanted to run, because I feel like we have Sal on, and I talk about one guy at a time, and I just wanted to, just sort of get him on the record on the whole group of guys. And that's 2 days in a row, and I don't expect this to change. I loved how he said that. Rather than lift up the bottom, I need them to fill in the top. That is a great way to put what many, I think, feel has been ailing the Bills' receiving corps specifically, if not really the whole roster. Like, the bottom of the roster has been good. Like, there's not – everything Terry Pagula said at that news conference wasn't an embarrassment. He stepped in it a few times, as he usually does, the reason why they don't put him in that situation that often. And talking about the roster overall and how good it is and rattling off the seedings they've had in the playoffs as proof that Brandon Beane has done such a great job putting this roster together, I thought was pretty shaky. The depth they have, though, has been good. I think the fact that they've been able to maintain their level of contender status, despite the number of injuries they've had, significant injuries over the last couple of years, does speak to the depth. So, like, the bottom end of the roster has been backfilled very effectively. But what's missing is the flowers. I've got all the fertilizer. I'm watering. They're all getting enough sun. They're like, where are the flowers? Where are the stars of the show? When people walk by your house, they're like, oh, look at that garden. The Bills do not have that part. And that's what the top end of the receiver room is like. I really like that from Sal. All right. Time to reload and reset here. We'll get back into the conversation about the Sabres and Robert Thomas from the Blues. I don't believe, Zach, have you been monitoring? I've been talking to Sal.
I've been monitoring. Nothing new.
Nothing new. So we had a couple of hours ago a Darren Drager tweet intimating that the Sabres were in hot pursuit of Robert Thomas, an 80-point-a-year player the last 2 full seasons with the Blues, a number 1 center. And then some other media have sort of filled in around that. Chris Johnson of TSN and The Athletic said it is not believed that the Sabres are it looks like 3 number 1 picks, or a pool of assets that equal that is basically, I'm sorry I worded that so sloppily. I got stuck. Is maybe the return. Jeremy Rutherford, longtime on the Blues beat, also with The Athletic, said despite the Blues being very interested in Bo Byram last summer, he is not thought to be a part of the conversation regarding a return for Thomas. So I think the thought is it's prospects and picks. We'll see if it gets across the finish line, but there was a lot of heat on it earlier today. We'll pick back up on that conversation, whether you think the Sabres should go big game hunting, because that's exactly what trading for Robert Thomas would be. He's, I think, the top target on the trade board right now in the league. So certainly a giant fish that I was not thinking about when I got up today. We'll talk more about it as we go. 803-0550 is the phone number if you want in on that conversation, or just the Sabres in general. Love to hear it. But the Thomas conversation has got us it's got our minds racing. So we want to dive back into that at 803-0550. Mike is out today. I am the Bulldog, and you're listening to WGR.
Sabres game night, and they are back home for the first time since February 5th. They are taking on the Vegas Golden Knights pregame at 6 for a 7 p.m. puck drop, both, of course, right here on WGR. In net, all signs are pointing to Alex Lyon getting the start, and then Mark Stone is going to be out tonight for Vegas. And before puck drop, Sabres, they're going to be honoring Tage Thompson, Jack Eichel, and Noah Hannafin, as all three were part of the gold medal winning United States team over at the Olympics. Our own Paul Hamilton has more on tonight up at our website, WGR550.com. It was initially reported a few hours ago. We haven't gotten anything new as of yet, but if you have missed it, TSN hockey insider Darren Dreger was reporting that sources are saying talks have started to heat up between the Sabres and the St. Louis Blues involving 26-year-old center Robert Thomas. Chris Johnston of The Athletic added on to that, saying the Sabres are offering the equivalent of multiple first-rounders. Again, nothing official on this, and it's been a few hours since we've had any new information, but we will keep you posted if anything changes. And then in the NFL, the Arizona Cardinals are releasing quarterback Kyler Murray. The 28-year-old has been with Arizona since being drafted first overall back in 2019, but went to the playoffs just once in his 7 seasons. That's Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet with you for the extra mile since 1935. I'm Zach Jones for Western New York's Voice of the Fan, WGR.
It was, only a matter of time, right? There's so many great players in the organization, and you go through some hard years, and it can make you better as a group. You see some of the guys that have been here for quite a while, and obviously the two people that come to mind for me are Tage and Rass, and they've meant to the organization and continuing to get better every year and just pushing them. It's really good to see for those guys. I think about all the other people within the organization, the people that are behind the scenes that have been doing an unbelievable job of, representing the organization for a long time, the equipment guys, the athletic guys, those guys that have been here for a while. They want this, and there's so many new faces over there. Credit to them. They've played well this year and put themselves in a really good position.
That is former Sabre captain, current Vegas Golden Knight Jack Eichel, talking this morning about tonight. The Vegas Golden Knights are in town. There is a hockey game tonight downtown, sold-out crowd. Tage Thompson, there'll be a pregame ceremony recognizing him and his gold medal Team USA teammates, Noah Hannafin and Jack Eichel. I thought we'd be spending a lot of time today talking about the relative merits of booing players that have become villains, but as it turns out, we've had something more fun to talk about than that. Not that that's not fun or interesting, but Robert Thomas has been dominating the day today. We'll get right back to calls here at 803-0550. Blues centerman, just in case you're riding around and you're like, I like thinking about it like this, that you out there, you've been a Sabres fan, but you had been detached for a while. You're sort of out of it. And they're good again. Maybe you even believe in it and you're excited. Maybe you're going to this game. Maybe you've been to other games. You're just like, you're back in. Like, oh, they're getting me back in. This is so cool. I've missed this, right? But you haven't exactly been following the league as aggressively as you once did. Or maybe you're just the sort of person that doesn't really pay attention to the rest of the league that much anyways, aside from the team that the Sabres are playing. And the Blues are, a twice-a-year opponent, home and away. And Robert Thomas is maybe not a guy that is at the level in the league that, you know about him or you've heard of him. Excellent 200-foot player. He reads, the scouting reports on him that I have read a lot like Josh Norris without the injury history. So you've got an 80-point player the last couple of years with the Blues, bona fide number one center, good all over the ice, dependable defensively. He's above 50% on draws, by the way, not by a lot, like 52, 53% is around where he's at, but that, just if you're looking to check a box. Very interesting and exciting player. $8 million or so a year for 5 more years after this one is where we're at with him. And news started percolating about the Sabres being interested in this and it gaining momentum into the afternoon. It's been quiet now for a couple of hours, so I don't want to say that means fires are out. Who knows? Maybe phone calls are being made. Maybe I's are being dotted and T's are being crossed. I don't know. But I love this idea. I love the energy around it. And I mostly love that in this town where the fan base has been as detached as it is, like I just described, that maybe a lot of you are like, why? Bulldog's all fired up about this guy. I barely know who he is. We're back, baby. That's the point. We're back. I love this on Twitter. Sabres are so back. 1 hour of trade speculation to open the show. We are living the dream. I mean, I totally agree. Another listener asks, can't we just stash Greenway on long-term IR for the rest of the season to create cap space? My understanding is absolutely you can do that. So I'm pretty sure that that's correct. Those just a couple. A lot of responses today. A lot of energy. It doesn't take much. The Sabres, to me, while I wasn't thinking today about a major move, like getting the top guy on everybody's trade speculation board around the league, like league media covering the league, go search them. They're out there. Robert Thomas is right at the top. I wasn't thinking the Sabres needed to make this move, but I love it in that it signals that they recognize that they're as good as anybody in the East, which I think is true. And it also may signal that they want to cover themselves in the sadly all too likely event of a Josh Norris injury. I know the Sabres they've had a great year, and Norris hasn't played a ton, but that hot stretch that they got on coincided with him being in the lineup. And they've done plenty of winning without him this year. But if you want to think about, to me, I talked about this, I think, on Monday. Or no, last week. Whatever, one day last week. What is the single biggest variable for the Sabres right now? I said it's Norris. If he's in the lineup, I think they can run with anybody in the conference. If he's out, that's a big hole. They don't have a replacement there. Guess what? It might be considered an embarrassment of riches to have, if you were to pull this trade off without divesting of anything major off of your NHL roster, to have Tage Thompson, Josh Norris, and Robert Thomas on your team at the same time. Someone's playing the wing, probably Tage. I certainly hope that he's okay with that if they pull this off. But having Thomas as a fallback if something happens to Norris, to me, it's chess versus checkers. If that enters into the thinking at all, I don't know. The Sabres might treat Josh Norris like any other player. Boy, we sure hope he doesn't get hurt. But his history just is very shaky to me. And counting on him to help you do some heavy lifting in April and May in the playoffs, to me, could be tough. Having another guy would really, really offset that. So I like this idea a lot, especially if it doesn't disturb what I think is the Sabres' superpower. And I don't know that it won't, but again, a lot of the reporting around this is that it's prospect-based and not one of your top 4D based. And if that's the case, I love it all the more, because I think those top 4D on this team right now for the Sabres are absolutely their superpower. It's the thing that drives them right now. And parting with one of them and trying to fill that hole, I think, could get pretty tough pretty fast. 803-0550 is the number. Mike is first up this segment. Hi, Mike. Thanks for calling. You're on the air here on WGR.
Hey, Bulldog. I couldn't agree with you more. And let me just go through some of the reasons. Right now, we've got a huge glut with young NHL-ready forwards. Kulik, Ostlund, Roseanne, Hellenius, Wahlberg, with nowhere for them to go because they're all top six-ish type offensive players. We have a goalie in Rochester who is blocked. He's playing great in Rochester. He had a great year last year, but he's blocked. And we have Jack Quinn, who's got some, he scores some goals. So what I'd love to see him do is take Levi, take Hellenius or Rosen, take a first-round pick and Quinn, and you package that. And what that does is, if we lose Tuck in the off season, the money that we're would have spent on Tuck we spend on Thomas. So it's a wash there.
Uh-huh.
We have a situation where if Quinn is gone and we put Greenway on long term, Thomas's salary fits perfectly. We don't have to do anything else with the cap. This way we not only protect ourselves for this year, but we protect ourselves for the future if Tuck leaves, and it opens up one spot for one of those younger guys next year to come into the lineup because right now there's no room for them.
Yeah, I think that's very well thought out, Mike. Thank you very much for the call. And like all the guys, all the prospects are not created equal. You mentioned Roseanne and Helenus in the same breath. And I'm saying that you're doing this, that you're saying they're all interchangeable. But which ones are going to be the best, you don't really know. Roseanne, the shine is off a little bit. Like he hasn't been able to break through yet. That doesn't mean he won't. But like, to me, parting with him would not be tough at all. Whereas Helenus, we saw some flashes earlier this year that to me were very enticing, right? And so including him in that is different to me than including Roseanne, but it's still not enough to put up a stop sign for me. Like, I think it should hurt somewhere if you're going to pull off getting an $8 million top line center on your team at or around the trade deadline. You should not expect to like just, oh, here are all the guys we don't like or I don't like anymore, who I don't think project as whatever, top 6 or top pair or whatever. Like, just shovel them out and I'm going to go get this guy. It usually doesn't work like that. There's usually at least a stinger in there. Like, that's too bad. I still would do it with any of the names you mentioned. If what Mike just laid out were enough to pull off that trade, I am making that trade 100 times out of 100. I'm just absolutely doing it. What do you think? 803-0550 is the number. We're wide open from now until Sabres pregame at 6. So you want to get in on the conversation, we'll definitely have time for you at 803-0550. Mike is away today. I'm the Bulldog. This is WGR. It is a fun. I think it's a fun day. I think we have a couple of things. One that has just presented itself in the last hour or so since I arrived here at Radio City for today's show. The other involves it's all hockey. By the way, we'll talk to Sal at 4:00. There's a deadline for franchise tags, not that pertains to the Bills, but there's some news in the league and some players that aren't being tagged. Trey Hendrickson maybe at the top of the list that could be of interest at a position of need for the Bills. So we will get some football. We'll get a football quota in with Sal. But today is a super fun day, I think, for hockey fans and Sabres fans here in Western New York and even Southern Ontario if you're still out there. We've got a game, first game in almost a month. At home, so it's been a while with the Olympic break mixed in there. We know the gold medal won by Tage Thompson. The Vegas Golden Knights are here. Jack Eichel, former Sabres captain, key player on Team USA, also expected to be prominently featured in a pregame ceremony along with his teammate Noah Hannafin from the Vegas Golden Knights. And so we've got like the relationship between a former star player who eventually burned bridges, napalm bombs, the whole thing, just get me out of here. And Jack Eichel eventually did get out of here. And so that relationship is always interesting to me. Some years have passed. The Sabres are good again, which I'll get to in a moment, which I think is the kind of thing that can soften even the hardest of hearts when it comes to a player who left under the circumstances that Jack Eichel left in. But that is going to have to that was going to lead today's show until, again, about an hour ago when I rolled in here to Radio City, and the first thing I saw when I logged in was some reporting from one of the bigwigs in hockey circles, Darren Dreger, saying that the Sabres and the Blues, like it's hot and heavy right now. And I want to point out that an hour has gone by since he tweeted that, and we haven't gotten any more traction, any more word that things are advancing. Oftentimes, if you're a real regular, like psycho, I mean that as a compliment, listener of this show, if it can be taken that way, if you're someone who listens a lot, you know that Mike and I share a take about these big NHL reporters, how usually you get one or two of them leaking out that something is close to happening, and then like magic within like 15 or 20 minutes, it happens, right? That doesn't appear to be the case when it comes to the Sabres and Robert Thomas. But when I got here, I saw a tweet from Darren Dreger saying, like, it's kind of a buyer's market, and you've got some new teams involved, you know, one of them being the Sabres, who are in the buyer's market, and they're hot and heavy after Robert Thomas, a number one center from the St. Louis Blues. Not a player that I've spent a lot of time prior to an hour ago thinking about, because I didn't really feel like a player with that contract. He's got, I think, 5 more years at $8 million. He's basically got Josh Norris's contract, is what he's got. And he plays the same position. Point-a-game player, 200-foot player, excellent player. Still pretty young, 26, I think, is his age. So really cool idea, but not something I thought the Sabres would go shopping for. If indeed they are shopping for it. I mean, I believe they're at least looking at it. I don't think Darren Dreger would be tweeting this sort of thing for his health. Chris Johnston, another of the big guys. There's your tandem. One from TSN, one affiliated with Sportsnet, I believe is where Chris Johnston works. He said the Sabres are offering or looking to meet the asking price of $3. I don't know if this is the Blues asking price, but I'm wording it sloppily. That the Sabres are working toward a package that is the equivalent of 3 first-rounders. So what that means is probably a first-round pick, like in the draft coming up, a future draft this year or next, and players who would be equated to being still. Rolling along here on a pretty hot and heavy Tuesday. Sabres and Vegas Golden Knights playing some NHL hockey downtown Buffalo tonight. Face-off coming up a little after 7. Pregame rolls at 6, and we have a full bank of phone callers to talk about the Sabres and the trade deadline on Friday and this Robert Thomas rumor that has been really, it basically has swallowed us whole today, which I'm 100% here for. I am the Bulldog. Mike has the day off today. Let's fire it back up. Howie is first up this segment. Hi, Howie. Thanks for calling. You're on WGR.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I actually tried yesterday after that caller suggested the Sabres try to get Igor Shesterkin. And as a Ranger fan, I laughed. And after today's thing, you must be like, just like you said, you've got to be loving this with the big game hunting with Shesterkin and Thomas.
Well, Shesterkin's a pipe dream. I mean, I could not believe the guy brought that up. But, this is real, I think. We'll see if they pull it in. But anyway.
I agree with you. And as a fan of the Rangers, who have now, like, just the bottom completely fell out, I'm hoping Shesterkin waives his no-move clause at some point in the draft. And he does get traded for a haul. But since you're talking Thomas and looking for a center, allow me to pitch you Vincent Trocheck, who might be 6 years older, but has also only got 3 more years left on his deal, for $3 million cheaper, wins more faceoffs, plays on the power play, and does everything. He might be a lot cheaper than Thomas, and he's also on the block. Yep. So I think he'd probably be available for, instead of like a package of like 4 top-tier prospects, you could probably, if you're Buffalo, get him for maybe a single roster player, 2 prospects of the varying value, and maybe a pick. And on the plus side, given Chris Drury's trade history, they could probably fleece the Rangers in the deal, and you know it's going to be a good deal when both teams are angry about it. So I would be angry at the fact that the Rangers would probably get fleeced, but on the plus side, living in Western New York, I'd be really happy for all the people I know because it would mean Buffalo's going all in. And there's a whole generation of people who are going to get a chance to watch Stanley Cup playoff hockey. And for that, I am really grateful, especially since I work in a school. I'm going to get a chance to talk to students like, do you understand why it's so much better than the NBA? Watch. It's so much better. So, and if Buffalo doesn't succeed on getting a top-tier center, allow me to also pitch you Sam Carrick and Braden Schneider, both of whom would improve on the margins for what Buffalo's looking to do, which is succeed in the playoffs because you need depth
Howie.
and you need experience. Thanks a lot for taking my call.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Howie's trying to sell me everything the Rangers don't need anymore. That's basically what's happening there. To me, going big is not Vincent Trocheck. That's not a move that I would hate. I think penalty kill, bottom 6, it should not cost you anywhere near as much, but it's a very different ad to me. It's not it is a going for it move, but it's more, it is not someone who provides you a cushion if something happens to Josh Norris. Whereas Robert Thomas, to me, absolutely does. Fall back maybe, but right now, I don't think it equates to being really in the same range of moves. 803-0550, the number. Keep them coming. I am the Bulldog, and this is WGR.
Sabres game night tonight, and they are home for the first time since February 5th, and they're going to take on the Vegas Golden Knights pregame in an hour at 6, a 7 p.m. puck drop, both, of course, right here on WGR. In net, all signs are pointing to Alex Lyon getting the start, and then Mark Stone is going to be out tonight for Vegas. But before puck drop, the Sabres are going to be honoring Tage Thompson, Jack Eichel, and Noah Hannafin. All three were on the gold medal winning U.S. team from the Olympics just a week ago. Our own Paul Hamilton has more on tonight up at our website, WGR550.com. And it has been a few hours since we've gotten any updates on this, but if you have missed it, TSN Hockey insider Darren Drager reporting that sources are saying talks have started to heat up between the Sabres and the St. Louis Blues involving 26-year-old center Robert Thomas. Chris Johnston of The Athletic added on saying that the Sabres are offering the equivalent of multiple first-rounders. Nothing official as of yet. It has been a few hours since we've gotten any new information, but when we do, we'll have you covered right here on WGR. And then looking across the rest of the league, we've got 10 other games tonight, some of the notable matchups to keep an eye on. The Bruins hosting the Penguins, and the Panthers are in Jersey versus the Devils, both also at 7. Senators out west versus the Oilers at 9. 9:30 sees Minnesota hosting Tampa, and then at 10, the Sharks, they have Montreal in town. While in the NFL, the big news from today, the Arizona Cardinals are releasing quarterback Kyler Murray. The 28-year-old has been with Arizona since being drafted first overall in 2019, but went to the playoffs just once in his 7 seasons. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet with you for the extra mile since 1935. I'm Zach Jones for Western New York's Voice of the Fan, WGR.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
The Tampa Bay Rays, they're defunct.
They don't exist anymore?
They don't exist anymore. I just
The Red
decided
Sox?
today. We should make a call, let them know. But I just decided they're out. I would rather watch the guy, the painting guy. Who's the painting guy?
Bob Ross.
I'd rather watch Bob Ross than watch my favorite baseball team play in Tampa.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
What a matchup. It is bracket season. What a matchup. Your favorite team playing a game in Tampa, or Bob Ross painting a lake and a mountain.
Give me the lake all day long.
On WGR, Sports Radio 550.
Thanks for being with us this Tuesday afternoon. I am the Bulldog. Mike Schopp is out sick today. We are all hoping he feels well enough to rejoin the program tomorrow. We've had so far a fun couple of hours dreaming about Robert Thomas of the St. Louis Blues changing the Blues uniform, which has always, as a kid, it's been very different at times, but I used to confuse the Blues with the Sabres when I was little. Maybe a lot of you that are the same age grew up watching those Saturday afternoon games on NBC. Remember the Blues and thinking, it looks kind of similar. Anyway, Robert Thomas has been the talk of the town here today, at least, the talk of the show. Anyway, I don't want to be so bold as to say it's the talk of the town because, I don't know how far our reach is. But, we're on the Twitch now. So we've always got, and YouTube, we got that going for us. Just to review quickly, Darren Drager, Sabres are in hot and heavy, I'm paraphrasing, on Robert Thomas of the Blues. Chris Johnston says likewise, and the equivalent of 3 first-round picks, maybe, going back. Not all actually first-round picks, but a package that equates to that. Is what he was talking about. There's been a lot of other stuff on the fringes, those are the big guys. Jeremy Rutherford of The Athletic, long time on the Blues beat, mentioned earlier that despite being very interested in Bo Byram over the summer, that he is not believed to be a part of the package being discussed between the Sabres and the Blues. The most notable thing about that is that Jeremy Rutherford is referring to the package. That implies that this is, maybe it's close. I don't want to pretend like it's imminent, but who knows? But there was that. There has been some, and maybe if you're the kind of Sabres fan that is listening to me, watching me on the Twitch or the YouTube today, also refreshing Twitter for any kind of Robert Thomas news, you might be seeing different reports. I just came across one from Jordan Schmaltz, whose Twitter bio I kind of like. Cup of Cups of Joe in the NHL, played a couple games, all-star in the AHL, not saying I was good. He has been running with this trade is alive. It's an idea. Jack Quinn, Consta Helenus, and Owen Power, which is the first time I shuddered the whole time I've been sort of following this story. But I will tell you, after coming across that tweet just a little bit ago in my feed, I went to Jordan Schmaltz's page, and he has since posted a tweet saying he's hearing Power is not a part of it, which is a huge relief to me. To me, any trade that they're making that doesn't disturb their superpower, which is those top 4D, I don't want to say any trade I'm in favor of, but like a trade of this magnitude, a trade to acquire a top centerman that doesn't include Byron Power, Dahlin, or Samuelson, I'm all ears. There are other guys that would hurt. I'd like to see Helenus develop here as a Sabre, but if he has to be the piece of this trade package that's going to sting, I'm ready to be stung. Sting away. I love this Thomas idea. I think it gives the Sabres so much more flexibility. I think, like a lot of you, I've been all year worried about Josh Norris. That is an excellent player. Last week, one day, I was in here by myself, I think maybe last Wednesday, I don't remember, talking about the single biggest variable in the Sabres being not just a playoff team, but making noise in the Eastern Conference is Josh Norris. I think if he's there and you can count on close to point-a-game type performance and good 200-foot play, then I think you've got to look at this. I think if he gets hurt again, which has happened every single year of his NHL career, and now maybe he's already through it for this year, and he'll be fine from here to the end, whenever the end comes. Hopefully, into the playoffs. I think another guy like Thomas, who in the short term might force you to move Thompson back out to the wing, probably would, because I don't think you're going to go with those three guys all as centers. I think you want to have those guys all be three of your top six. So, but having Thomas there and moving Tage, if indeed that ends up being what happens, gives you at least a fallback if something happens to Norris. So I'm not sunk if one of my top two centers is hurt again. I know anyone can get hurt. It's just Norris, his history is scary. I think it's the biggest reason why Ottawa was willing to move him last year at the deadline, because they were headed to the playoffs and they wanted some kind of certainty, as much certainty as you can have playing pro sports night to night, about their lineup. And they just decided after too many injury-riddled years that they couldn't count on Norris. And while Cousins isn't going to give them the production that Norris was going to give them, it would give them at least a stable presence in the lineup. And so I think the Sabres could be trying to accomplish the same thing here without divesting themselves of Norris in the process. That's how I see it for now. I think the rest can just come up naturally as we talk here. 803-0550 is the number. Nick is first up this segment. Hi, Nick. Thanks for calling. You're on WGR.
Hey, guys. How are you? I just started listening probably about 10 minutes ago, so correct me if I'm wrong or stop me. But the question I want to bring up is with Norris.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are we really, like, I don't want to say stuck with him, but that's why Ottawa wanted to get rid of him, and we're in that predicament now with him. Like, did anybody bring up that point?
I mentioned it earlier that they if St. Louis was open to it, I would have to consider doing it, as much as I do like Norris as a player for the reasons that I just talked about. But the reporting does not indicate at all at this point, and I would be surprised, frankly, because I think him getting here and getting hurt already twice this year, again, just further scars his reputation. And I would be really surprised if the Blues took that contract off your hands.
Well, No, I understand that point, but it's kind of what I was getting at. I wasn't even really talking about adding him in the Thomas deal. I was talking about maybe shopping him a little bit to see if there was any market for him to maybe bring someone else in, maybe another defenseman for the bottom pair, somewhere along those lines.
Listen, I would have to be open to that. Again, I'm going to be surprised if they can move that contract. It's a tough deal to take on given his injury history. And it was for the Sabres. They were in a position to take the chance. They took it, and it has not really stung them yet. I mean, they're having this incredible season here that we didn't really see coming. Maybe plenty of you might have thought the Sabres could be improved. But to be, a contending level team was not something I saw in the cards. And I think that's where they are now. So they've gotten away with it. Sure, if someone wanted to take that contract off my hands and I could replace Norris with Thomas and I don't have to move Tage to the wing, I would have to listen to that. Because I think ultimately, you may end up in a situation this summer where you're choosing between Alex Tuch and, maybe this is a part of it. Maybe you're choosing Norris, and we've already chosen Norris, and Thomas overpaying Tuch because you don't like his age, the contract demands, whatever it is. So if you could free up that money by divesting yourself of Norris, replacing him with Thomas, and then still keep Tuch, that I could be – I'm certainly going to listen to that. I would just be surprised if there's a market for Norris at this point, given the injury history. It's why I like, best case scenario, you make this trade, you don't mess up anything really significant on your NHL roster, especially those top 4D. You still have Norris here. If he's healthy, you are in great shape in your top 6. If he gets dinged again, you at least have Thomas and Thompson to sort of offset that, and I like that a lot about this, the deeper you go thinking about it. Thank you for the call. Pat is next up. Hi, Pat. Thanks for calling. You're on the air here on WGR.
Hey, good afternoon. So I guess it's just a story, but I met my wife 20 years ago. The first time she ever came to my house, we watched the Ottawa Brawl. And about beginning of January, we were sitting on the couch, and I look at her. I'm like, hey, I think we might actually do this. This might actually be happening. We were getting excited. I'm like, if we make the playoffs, I'm buying a new jersey. I haven't bought a jersey since 06, 07. She's like, okay, let's do this. And, the other night after we beat Tampa, I look at her, I'm like, I think this is happening. And I look at her, I'm like, let's do this. So we ordered tickets to the Dallas game, which is, April 15th, the day before my birthday. I'm like, we're going to that game, and I'm buying a new jersey, and you're buying a new jersey. And, when I wake up on my birthday, we're making the playoffs. And it's just, and now we're talking about Robert Thomas, and I'm just thinking to myself, what a world we live in. 3 years ago, I canceled my subscription to, MSG because we're awful, but now we're here, and it's, month and a half before we finish the playoffs, and I'm going to the last game of the season, and I'm buying a new jersey, and how great is this? It just feels, it's different to be a Sabres fan since the day you were born. Like, how awesome! I
hear you, Pat. If you don't mind, what jerseys are you guys going to buy? Do you know yet?
So, my wife is 4'10", so I told her she should buy a Thompson jersey, so that way when we walk around with them, I can tell people that you don't like hockey, you just want to be tall. And I am leaning between Doan and McLeod, and probably McLeod because he's great and probably has the best smile in all of hockey.
All right. I love it, Pat. Well thought out. Appreciate the phone call here. Yeah, that is how jarring this is. I mean, 3 months ago. I mean, the timeline was when he canceled his TV subscription, that he had for the Sabres. I'm sure plenty of you have done that over the last few years. Just a few months ago, this all, like, I'm trying to be cognizant of the person who, I think people still do this, right? They get out of work and turn on their car and turn on the radio and like, oh, let's see what the guys on the radio are talking about. If you like the show or like us or hate us and hate listen, whatever turns the crank for you, you get there. You're turning this show on. You're hearing me. You know me, right? Hi, it's me. And I'm talking about this guy from the Blues who's making $8 million a year and is a number one center. And you might be like riding in your car and going like, man, I haven't been paying attention to the league. Like it's a little bit like, to me, like I follow baseball very casually now. Went to a Red Sox game last year. Going to go to a couple more this year. Not in Boston. I'm going to go to Pittsburgh with my son Owen to catch a couple of games in August. I'm very excited about that. But I haven't really gotten like I'm not following a bunch of beat reporters on the Red Sox beat. I'm not real plugged in, right? And so this feels a little bit to me like what would happen when like free agency in baseball or the trade deadline, and it's some player from a team that I don't follow that's making, some incredible figure. And I'm like, I'm not even sure I know who that is. That I'll bet there are people listening to me right now that are having that experience with Robert Thomas of the St. Louis Blues. Like, who's this now? Was that the guy everybody wanted when you traded Ryan O'Reilly? Yeah, he was one of them. he was on that list, I'm pretty sure. Him and Kyrou were their young up-and-comers then, and have both established themselves as fantastic NHL players. But the Blues are last in their division again and rebuilding, retooling, starting over, stockpiling assets. So it makes sense that they've got a player of this caliber that they're looking to get rich on in the trade market. And the Sabres do happen to have, I'm thinking about a caller from last hour, Mike, who mentioned, like, I'm so flush with guys that, we don't know one from the other, which ones are all going to hit and not hit, which ones are going to turn into, the next big thing or become, career borderline NHLers or AHLers. But, you probably don't have in the very short-term future room for all of them, right? Ostlund got here and sort of forced his way in. Before the break, it looked like maybe Helenius was doing that, but he's gone back to Rochester. He's someone I'm very excited about. But he's on that list. Roseanne, I think, is still on that list. To me, Quinn is sort of in between. He's an NHL player. He's got an NHL contract, but he's not making a ton of dough. And to me, is someone who doesn't have to be a core player here that could easily be included in this mix. Would help offset some salary, too, going out the door. But you've got guys that there just isn't going to be room. Roseanne's another one that there isn't going to be room for all of them here. So I could put 2-3 of them together in a deal and pull in this guy. Man, I'm listening to that all day long. Again, especially if it does not involve those top 4D. Because that to me is like the, as much as, of course, you're not trading Thompson, you're not trading Tuck, I don't think. You're not moving Josh Doan. You just signed him, right? You've got like guys that are obviously, I think, untouchable. You are flush with 4 very high level defensemen right now, but I think moving, obviously Dahlin's not going anywhere. Samuelson's a bargain on the contract he's playing on. It really is about buy room or power, and I would not want to move either one of them right now, even for a player of this caliber. Is there a way you could do it? Sure. I presented a scenario earlier where you move to get Thomas, right? The Blues are going to insist on buy room or power. Let's just say, hypothetically, I'm talking now, okay? This is not what's being or has been reported, all right? And even the one report that mentioned power has already been refuted by the person who said it to begin with. But if you had to, right, you like this idea so much, but it has to be Owen Powers included. How do I do that? I mean, I might just walk away from it. I might not make the deal. And there goes my Josh Norris insurance and all that, right? All the things I like about it go away. But if I were going to do it, well, then what do I have to do now? I have to find a replacement for Power in my lineup. Justin Falk is on the Blues. I did mention this earlier. I don't love this idea because of his age. He's 34. The contract is pretty weighty, $6.5 million. Like, I thought of him even as someone to fill this bottom six role. Like, it's a luxury if you have a player of that reputation playing on your third pair. But if you could pull it off financially, like, I was willing to listen to it. Fitting him in to, say, Owen Power's spot in the lineup is just it's a lot riskier to me. There's not a guy at this stage of his career that is capable of moving around the ice the way those top four guys do. So what has Falk been in his career? A point producer, a power play guy, a dependable, very good all-around defenseman. I just think you would lose a lot in how you're attacking teams without a Power in that spot and someone like Falk instead. So if Power had to be involved, I might get to, well, then I need to find Falk here. Or let me see if I can re-engage with Toronto about Oliver Ekman-Larsson, if I ever have engaged in the first place. Because, again, in a short-term playoff run type situation, maybe you get away with that. But you'd be really messing with the dynamite that the Sabres have been able to deploy. Like, there's been a lot of talk today. Elliot Friedman had a turn. Jeff Merrick was on our morning show saying, you don't want to do too much to the forward group here because it's working, right? It's been so good. Like, you don't want to mess with it. And certainly adding Robert Thomas is messing with it in a severe way. That's probably your number one center. If you're bumping Tage Thompson out to the wing, I think you're putting Robert Thomas on his line, and you're going. That's it. And Norris is your number two. And if something happens to Norris, then I've got Thompson. I can slot him back into the middle and move Thomas down, and I keep going, right? And while that does mess with what you've had going up top, it leaves the top four defensemen alone. And that, to me, any point being made about not messing with the chemistry of this team, if you want to make it about those four dudes, I'm right there with you. I think that could be something that could really mess this whole thing up. Even if you pull in Robert Thomas, but you give up Power or Byram to do it, I think that would be very risky. Because I've said it for weeks here. This team's superpower is those top 4D. Watch how they play. Watch how they cycle. They're not alone in this. A lot of teams have transitioned to cycling in the offensive zone up high above the circles. Between the circles and the blue line is where a lot of the Sabres and a lot of other teams are doing this. Cycling. Get it down low and work it down low, and low to high still has its place, but the Sabres effectively cycle up top. And the main reason they are so dangerous and good at it is because of the four defensemen they have. They're interchangeable basically with any of your forwards. So that you start cycling up high, and Dahlin having the puck on his stick is the same as Thompson having the puck on his stick. I know the skill sets are different, right? Dahlin's not as apt, or Power is not as apt to take someone off the dribble, so to speak, the way Thompson will. But that high cycle, those 4D are what make that go. And taking any one of them out of there, I think, would be, but I'd have a very tough time, as much as I like this Thomas idea. So, again, most of the reporting does not indicate, like the rumors, that that's the situation. But if it were, I'd have a hard time saying I love this. Because I just don't want to mess with those 4D. 803-0550 lines are wide open if you want to get in. We still have another more than half an hour to go here before Paul Hamilton shows up and ruins everything with the Sabre. I kid because I love him. Paul will join me at the top of the 6 o'clock hour, for the start of the Sabres pregame show. Jack Eichel and the Vegas Golden Knights are in town to play the Sabres face-off coming up a little bit after 7. Mike is away today. I am the Bulldog. You want to keep talking Sabres? Lines are open for you at 803-0550. This is WGR.
ready to host the Vegas Golden Knights. Again, pregame at 6 for a 7 p.m. puck drop. Both, of course, right here on WGR. In net, all signs are pointing to Alex Lyon getting the start. And then for Vegas, Mark Stone is out for tonight's matchup. And before puck drop, the Sabres are going to be honoring Tage Thompson along with Jack Eichel and Noah Hannafin, as all three were on that gold medal winning U.S. team. Our own Paul Hamilton has more on tonight at our website, WGR550.com. It's been a few hours since we've gotten any sort of update, but if you have missed it, TSN hockey insider Darren Drager reported that sources are saying talks have started to heat up between the Sabres and the St. Louis Blues involving 26-year-old center Robert Thomas. Following that, Chris Johnston of The Athletic added on, saying the Sabres are offering the equivalent of multiple first-rounders. Again, nothing official on that end, and it ultimately has been a few hours since we've heard anything new, but we'll keep you posted if any new information does come our way. And then in the NFL, the big news today, the Arizona Cardinals are releasing quarterback Kyler Murray. The 28-year-old has been with Arizona since being drafted first overall back in 2019, but went to the playoffs just once in his 7 seasons. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet with you for the extra mile since 1935. I'm Zach Jones for Western New York's Voice of the Fan, WGR.
Let me ask you this, Brian. If they add Robert Thomas, going into the playoffs, the Buffalo Sabres are what?
They're fighting for, in my opinion, the third best odds to win the East, which is still worthy of going for it. It's reasonable to expect it could happen. Everything's come together. When you go on a heater like this, everything's coming together. I think Tampa and Carolina deserve the benefit of the doubt based on their pedigree, their history, their coaching. Is Buffalo better than Montreal, Detroit, Pittsburgh, the Islanders? Yeah, I think you can make that case.
Is it a bad look when a host of a radio show in Buffalo says the show that his show just played a clip of from Toronto is his favorite radio show? I know I could listen to other times. I'm not one who I'm grateful for all of you that do it. I should probably listen to that's TSN's Overdrive, Toronto. Brian Hayes, Jamie McLennan, and Jeff O'Neill. They used to be on like noon to 2. And I would catch them driving in here. Now they're on in this time slot because, well, they're awesome. And that's them talking about the Sabres and this rumored trade for Robert Thomas. And I love that Hayes put it just like Carolina and Tampa. Okay, sure. They're better than you. Who else? Nobody. So go for it. You just never know when your best opportunity is going to be, and this year could be it. That's why I love the energy behind this Robert Thomas conversation. Get right back to the phones here at 803-0550. Want to share this from our buddy Chad DeDominicis with Expected Buffalo. Chad was on our show just a couple of weeks ago, I think, during the Olympic break. And he shares this, just his thoughts on what could be going on here and what a return to get Robert Thomas to the Sabres could look like. He says he believes it would be headlined with futures and minimal, if any, NHL roster impact. Logically, that almost has to mean Helenius and or Murtka are a part of the return. Forgot all about Radim Murtka playing junior hockey, but the Sabres' first-round pick last year, along with a first to start. Probably 3-4 pieces overall is what Chad is betting on, and that lines up with a lot of the reporting we've seen on this already and a lot of the speculation that we've shared with you. What it does is protect your NHL roster. So, you're not pulling something out to bring something in. You're simply bringing in a great player and using mostly futures to make it happen, which, I'm 100% here for that. 803-0550 again is the number. Tim will be first up this segment. Hi, Tim. Thank you for calling. You're on the air here on WGR.
Bulldog, thanks for taking my call. I appreciate it. Love listening to you, especially when hockey is good again. I know the passion you have for the sport. So thank you for that. I also feel very fortunate to be able to listen to your son in the mornings. He's you. He is absolutely you. His mannerisms, I just love it. So thank you for both of you.
I appreciate you saying that, Tim. Thank you.
Yeah, true story. So I am the fan that you talked about the last couple of days in terms of how things have changed for me. I definitely went into a hole. My son would come home and say, "Aren't the Sabres playing?" And I'd say, "Yes, so what?" And now, of course, I can't, I can't make an appointment when there's a game. So with that said, this is where I talk out of both sides of my mouth and commit blasphemy. But, this is Kevin Adams' roster, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so I guess the question is, are we doing – and I completely understand why we made the move. I get it. I lived it. I get it. But at some point in time, are we doing a disservice and not giving some sort of credit for what he's put together?
Well, I think he'll get credit, Tim. It will not be, to me, an afterthought because it is quite literally true right now. Anyway, we'll see about a Robert Thomas trade. This team was built by Kevin Adams. The vast majority of the draft. He was on the job this was his 6th season. So it stands to reason, right? A lot of the draft picks, a lot of the guys that are here are guys that he chose. Not all of them, but most of it. And if they make this trade for Robert Thomas using largely futures, those are all Kevin Adams picks. It is, I think, right and fair to point that out. Of course, right? The trade that netted them Kesselring and Doan. Doan hit so well here so fast that he's already on a contract extension, paying him 7 times what he was making when he walked in the door. There have been good hockey moves here. What there hadn't been was any real faith in the direction of the organization. And that comes on with year over year of inaction to improve the roster when something's going wrong. And I think it also comes from just year over year of the players being treated like punchlines because of everything that went on. You go back to Reinhard, Eichel, and Ristolainen being traded in one off season. Well, Eichel was a little later. Those guys were in the summer, and then Eichel got traded once the season got going. But you get the point. Their reputation took a huge hit when Adams took that job. Within the league, within the players, within their peers, the Sabres were being laughed at regularly. And so, that all doesn't necessarily come down as being fair to Adams, but I cannot imagine this team playing with the heart and desire that they play with now if the move hadn't been made. I just don't think you can overstate how important it was to have a credible NHL experienced level of executives, plural, brought in here to sort of jumpstart this whole thing. I just don't think any of this would be happening if he were still the GM. It speaks a lot to faith in leadership and belief and the kind of things that get you to really dig in and play as hard as you possibly can every opportunity. Doesn't mean you're always going to be at your best. Your best some nights is not going to be good enough. Like that's the sport. That's how it happens. You can have the best intentions every night, and physically, emotionally, you maybe just can't get there all the time. But if you can get there often enough, like this team has, that piece, the belief piece, matters a lot. Because you're seeing it right here. The talent is basically the same. And what they've gotten instead, with the exception of Lyon, Adams brought Lyon in. That was his idea. His contribution shouldn't be underestimated. They've had a stability in goal that, if they were just Luukkonen and Levi or Luukkonen and your name here, they would have been in real trouble. But Lyon has really propped that up and helped them a lot. But basically, it's the same team. And Lyon was here at the start of the year when things weren't going well, and it just turned. As soon as there was word in the wind, credible word in the wind, that a move was going to be made when they got home from that road trip, everything changed. And look, I don't have other than the record, I don't have a data point to give you that proves it, but it's just too much of a coincidence to me. So, yes, give him credit, and I do think he will get it as we go here. Once everyone really believes, like, boy, wow, he really did look at these guys. Like, he built this team. That's correct. So, I wouldn't want to like try to change that in any way, but if you think this was all possible with him still as the GM, I mean, again, I can't write down or show you a chart as to why I disagree vehemently with you. I just don't think the previous 5 years tell me all I need to know about it. The attention to detail their best players have now did not exist with him as GM. It just didn't. Tage Thompson is a perfect case in point. I don't think I'm just whitewashing it now, like watching Thompson because they're good and going, oh, well, his defensive liabilities don't bother me anymore because they're getting results. I just don't see him making the sorts of decisions that I was used to seeing him make in the first month and a half, 2 months of the season. I think it changed. I think they're dug in. Anyway, thanks for the call. Really appreciate it. Rob is up next. Hi, Rob. Thanks for calling. You're on WGR.
Hi, Bulldog. I wanted to ask you about, I think it was about 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, you wrote an article titled, Is It Safe Yet to Be a Sabres Fan? And I can't tell you how many times I've asked myself that, and a few times I've said yes, and then it comes back to haunt me. I thought maybe you should probably write a part 2 to that.
I appreciate you remembering that. I don't recall that specific theme, but I believe you. I just don't have recall of it. I do think it is safe. I've been saying for weeks here, they're good. This isn't a fluke. This isn't just shooting percentage and save percentage. I mean, some of that, sure. But they defend well. They convert their chances. They're not a hot power play, really, team. They're just good. And that is months long now. So I think them going big game hunting here, if they're really in on Robert Thomas from the Blues, I think it's absolutely warranted. Because I do not think the conference is so top-heavy that you're looking at numerous teams that you just think, how do I beat that team? To me, it's Carolina and Tampa. And the last time I played Carolina, I got goalied. I mean, they had a great day. That was an afternoon game, right? Martin Luther King Day, I think. Martin Luther King Day, that was. Great outing. They lost 2-1 to Carolina. They just whooped Tampa in their place. Those are the kingpin teams in the East. Toronto's done. Boston's sort of like level with you. Montreal, Detroit, same thing. Those teams haven't won anything in a long time, but they are probably going to be playoff teams. You can absolutely see them handling any of those teams in a first-round series. Carolina and Tampa are the only two. And if this goes well and you get a second or a third in the division, you don't have to worry about them until the second round at the earliest. So I think it's called for to treat this like you got to look at it. And that's the thing I love the most about this story today. 803-0550 is the number. Got to hit up a break. We're about 15, 20 minutes away from Sabres pregame with Paul Hamilton. That's on the way at the top of the hour. I'm the Bulldog, and this is WGR. Cruising along here on a Tuesday afternoon. Sabres pregame just about 10 minutes away. Try to squeeze in as many calls. I mean, what a world. A full bank of calls all afternoon on the Sabres. And nobody's mad. I just want to freeze this moment. I just want to make this into like a touchstone that when I'm sad, I can I need like a park. I need a public display that we can all go and like touch the stuff. Remember that time in 2026, early in 2026, when no one was mad and people were excited about the Sabres again? Remember that? I need that in case it gets dark again, because this is it's almost too good to be true. Kevin is first up this segment. Hi, Kevin. Thanks for calling. You're on WGR.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. I just wanted to piggyback on the Rob Thomas conversation. I think you talk so much about how Montreal, we're neck to neck with Montreal, we're neck to neck with Boston, and all these teams. The Atlantic is so log jammed right now. I think adding a guy like Robert Thomas is really how you can get over that logjam, right? You have these young players like Peyton Krebs and Doan and all these young guys that could really benefit from a guy with the playmaker capability that Thomas has. 6'1" guy, center, great at faceoffs. And I think it was a New Jersey game I was watching the other day, and I'm like, man, they could really get better on faceoffs.
Yeah.
At this point, you're kind of seeing – little things before. It's like, man, I wish we can be a playoff team. But now you're seeing, all right, what can we do to get in the playoffs and be good and make it past the first round? That was the thing I was thinking was, face-offs. Robert Thomas is a guy you can plug in there and, he can be a home for Doan to score goals, for Krebs to score goals. And I agree with what you were saying with Power, right? You don't want the number one thing you don't want to do is mess with that chemistry right now. And those four top guys, we're so dangerous because you can jump up in the offensive zone, you can make plays there, and you're young enough to get back. And that's why, they've been talking about Justin Falk, maybe 10 years ago, whatever, he could be that guy. But I don't know if he can jump into the play, contribute offensively, and get back like a guy like Power can. I don't know.
No, same here. Yeah, I mean, I tried to, fill the hole if it was going to be created with Falk, and I just don't see it. I do like a player at that stage of his career, if I can live with that salary for a third pair guy, I'm very interested in that. Everyone was buzzing yesterday because Bergevin, Sabres assistant GM, and some other front office personnel went up to Toronto to see the Flyers and the Maple Leafs play last night. And, of course, all that focus is on Ristolainen because there's a lot of talk about him being moved. And I don't know. The reporting on that is the Flyers still want a one because somebody's going to trade for him to be a top four guy. That's not what I would be trading for him to do. I'd be trading for him to play 15 minutes a night on my third pair and maybe kill some penalties and cross-check some people in the face, right? Which has value, especially come playoff time, right? I was thinking in the same mode, although to me it's a better player overall, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Toronto, if they're going to move him, do I want to get in line on that and have him be a third pair guy that I think still the end's going to come eventually? He's older, but I think he still is playing at a level that could help you. So that was my thinking. Absolutely, the top 4D on this Sabres team to me need to be in a cocoon. That is the piece of this team I don't want to mess with. So hopefully that's the way this ends up going. Thank you for all the calls here. We got to hit a timeout here. Paul Hamilton with Sabres pregame right after this on WGR.